this regular meeting of the Midcoast Community Council of August 22nd, 2018 to order. Will the council members please introduce themselves, starting from my left? You.
Dan.
You're up.
Dan Haggerty.
Chris Johnson.
Claire Touton.
Brandon Kwan.
Dave Olson.
Barbara Mathewson.
Lisa Ketchum.
Great. So our first order of business is our Board of Supervisors report. I do not see Ellie Dahlman in the room. Are there other government officials who would like to make announcements? Harvey?
I'll be very brief. I know that you didn't come to hear me. I'm Harvey Rohrbeck, the Vice Mayor of Half Moon Bay. There are a couple of items that are relevant to the Midcoast, which I wanted to talk about. We opened our library, and when I say our library, it's everybody's library here. It's part of the entire coast side. We opened our library on Saturday, and if you haven't been there, you really ought to check it out. It is a beautiful building with many facilities, good for children, teenagers, quiet reading, adults. It's really a magnificent edifice. And we also, at our council meeting last night, set the rental fees for the community room, which can hold more people than are in this room. $10 an hour during the day. Pretty good. So if you have a need for as a nonprofit rate, please consider using our community room in the library. The other item that's of relevance to Midcoast is we are asking Caltrans to make some relatively minor modifications which will help improve traffic a bit at the intersections of Highway 1 and 92. We're going to have a big sign there that will threaten a big fine if you block that intersection. We know that's a real problem on the weekends. We're going to have a cruiser parked there to sort of remind people that they have to obey the law. We're going to add some stanchions to prevent people who are going from Highway 1 traveling north and going east on Highway 92 to try to prevent them from crossing over too quickly onto Highway 92. That causes a lot of backup there. And we're going to prohibit right-hand on red turns from Main Street east, Main Street heading south, going east on Highway 92. And so we're going to expedite that by getting Caltrans to do it soon.
Harvey, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
People coming from Ocean Colony can't turn onto 92. Is that what you mean?
No, they can't. Right now, a lot of people are scooching over too soon.
From the southbound, I mean.
From the northbound, correct. Yeah. So these will be, stanchions yay big, epoxied onto the roadway, and the idea is to keep people 400 feet long right away where they can't just go over right away and block the traffic on 92.
It blocks them from going to the other lane. There's two lanes there, so they have to stick to the one lane.
Yeah.
That's all.
Well, they have like a dedicated right turn lane that gets onto 92 anyways.
Okay, so this isn't the Half Moon Bay City Council. I think it's a great announcement. Take it up with the City of Half Moon Bay. Thanks, Harvey.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks. Ellie, did you have anything you wanted to say?
Sure. Good evening, Midcoast Community Council and Midcoast community residents. My name is Ellie Dahlman, and I'm here on behalf of San Mateo County Supervisor Don Horsley. I don't have many updates this evening other than reminder about a free composting workshop that the Office of Sustainability is offering in Pacifica. I left a few flyers out in the hallway, and I'll leave this for the council as well. And the second item is just another reminder about the upcoming annual bicycle and pedestrian count that's happening this September. We are looking for volunteers, so if anybody's interested, They are still open and accepting applications. It's a nationwide effort geared towards providing data collection and ongoing data for use by planners, governments, and general public, with the goal to provide accurate and consistent documentation on the usage and demands, and encourage investment in transportation modes other than single occupancy or other than vehicular transportation. So if there's any avid bikers or walkers that would like to see additional efforts to improve those modes of transit, I highly encourage you to sign up. And that's all that I have this evening, but I'd be happy to accept any questions or comments.
Thanks. Any questions from the council? Claire?
comment. I would encourage people to participate in the bike and pedestrian count because, as you implied, as we're trying to develop more trails here in the near future, the more information we can get about what needs we have for bike and pedestrian transportation, the better off we'll be in terms of getting funding.
Yes, I've signed up to volunteer. I'll be counting near Highway 1 and Marauder Road, so
Me too.
great.
Where do you sign
Did
up?
you-
You can sign up, you can contact me directly and I can put you in touch with staff. You can also email bikepedcountsmc@gmail.com. And there's also a phone number if you prefer to call, 650-599-1420. But there's also information, if you look at the San Mateo County Sustainability website, they have information up there under the Livable Communities Active Transportation section.
We had suggested they not count on Highway 1, but they go down to the trail. Do you think they're gonna do that?
I can check in with them. I'm not sure what the specific count locations
But you
are
want-
that they chose, other than the one that they assigned to me.
Which isn't gonna be very productive.
Yeah, I'll have to double check to see exactly where it was. but,
Mine is at Marauder Road and the trail.
Okay,
Yours says Highway 92?
I have to double check.
Or,
Right.
excuse me, Highway 1.
Yeah, I'll have to double check.
Yeah, all three are the trail.
Did you
But
have
yeah, the
something else?
more volunteers we have for the coast side, the more locations we'll be able to count here, so.
Any other questions from the council? All right, thank you very much, Ellie.
Great.
I will close the Board of Supervisors report and move on to public comment. This is comment for items not on the agenda, and the council cannot discuss the item. I have one speaker slip from Leslie Furchel. Give your name and your town.
Hi, Lindley Fischel, living in Montana, and I'd like to second the comment the Vice Mayor made about the library. It's great. Anyway, my comments are about Gray Whale Cove, and I'd like to just point out several things. Number one, you can leave it alone and take the consequences of people getting injured and killed. That's option number one. Option number two, possibly, is put a traffic light there. The problem with a traffic light is you're gonna have traffic backup, and you're also gonna have rear end collisions occurring during that time. Now, if you put a light there, and you have, say, 30 people or groups going across to the beach very easily during the daytime, the light has to be at least 1 minute to get the people across the road, and on the way back, it's gonna be another 1 minute. So right there, you already have 60 minutes when the road is closed to traffic. That means nobody's moving, and if you know what happens here on the weekends, it will be gridlock everywhere. The other problem, which is very important of this, is that during an emergency, we have people living on the coast here, Montana, Grenada. There's a medical emergency. They're going up Highway 1 to get to Seton Hospital or Peninsula, up Burlingame area to take their Calgary. You know, people are sick. They're stuck in traffic. They can't move. So that's another consideration about a traffic light there. The other option was we were talking about putting a bridge over to Gray Whale Cove. But I believe in order to do that, you also have to be in compliance with the American Disability Act, possibly. That means you cannot have stairs. You're going to have a ramp on both sides to accommodate people who have a disability. That kind of a ramp for that height will take up a large area of the parking area. And also on the western side, there's not really very much you can do right there. So that's the tunnel issue. Now we're talking about a bridge. Now we're talking about an underground tunnel. Well, very expensive, and I've been through a lot of tunnels in my time, pedestrian tunnels, and they have a certain smell to them, which is like urine and feces. Not only that, graffiti. Is the tunnel going to be lit up at night? You know, homeless people love tunnels, so do rats. But anyway, not trying to put the two together. So that is the tunnel option. And I haven't heard really this option, which is to take the road and move the road where the parking lot is. And move the parking lot where the road is. No traffic signs involved. It will slow down traffic because you have another S kind of a curve going around. Cheaper than a tunnel, cheaper than a bridge to move that around. And you can probably do it even a little bit better, higher up where the bathrooms are. You can probably carve that out. Then the last object, also like would really help that area, is we were talking about bicyclists. Okay, if you're a bicyclist, if you've ever ridden that stretch, it is deadly. Not only that, it's not deadly for the bicyclists. I don't know why people haven't died there, but also for vehicles. They need to make at least a strip wide enough from the tunnel down to Gray Whale Cove, and of course on the other side too. You know, it's like, I don't know why people haven't died there. So thank you very much. Hopefully you will kind of take those ideas under consideration when the time comes. Thank you.
Excuse me,
Thank you.
I forgot to turn this speaker, so can I mention Gray Well Cove too?
Sure, keep it as quick as you can. It's gonna be a long evening.
Carlisle and Young, Moss Beach. I moved to the coast in 1988. I believe Gray Whale Cove was a clothing optional beach at that time. May still be. I have never gone down there because I don't want to hike down and hike back up. Lazy. Okay, so a much cheaper way than putting in lights and clogging up the traffic would be to post a big sign that it's a clothing optional beach. Families can keep on heading down to Montero State Beach where they've just put in a much bigger parking lot with picnic tables, and it's easier to get down to the beach and so much more cost effective. And maybe families don't even know that's a clothing optional beach and they might not want to take their kids down there. So it would certainly help the congestion, I think, but I could be wrong.
All right.
Comment in rebuttal to that as a user.
Okay, wait, no back and forth on public comment. If you want to make a public comment, we'll entertain it, but no back and forth discussion, please. Does anybody else wish to make a public comment on an item not on the agenda? Carl?
I hope you'll forgive me a little bit of philosophy, but there seems to be no other place in the agenda to do this, and I'm liable not to ramble on about this when we get to more specifics later on. For a long time, there's been no question that the county has its own agenda for the coast side. And we, through thick and thin, project after project, have not been listened to. But there are some principles involved as we try to deal with the county that I don't think should be forgotten. One of them that comes up over and over again is aesthetics do not make damaging physical development better. The beach house may be painted a decent color, but it's still a tumor on the cherry stem of Half Moon Bay. In the long term, phasing in damaging development more slowly makes the final result just as bad. It just takes longer, things aren't as bad until you get there, but then they're bad. Another thing, when a place is already built out beyond sustainability, and sustainability means that which can be continued indefinitely with all known factors. When a place is built out beyond sustainability, cutting back additional proposed development to a lesser amount is still unacceptable. Another thing, you cannot legitimately elevate your own position in any discussion like this by pushing others down to a lower position. So we in our neighborhoods on the coast side are pushed down repeatedly for someone else's projects and agenda. A corollary to that, and you'll forgive the environmentalism here, is that you cannot legitimately develop one place at the cost of damaging another. That is not right. Your footprint by what you do here affects other places. And my particular interest in life are the wide open spaces of the West, the deserts especially. And they are being hammered by the footprint of urban development right now. So that's why I come up with that. So thank you for your time, and I'll talk to you later.
Thank you, Carl. Any other public comment? Okay. No.
You're not gonna allow me to make a public
Not
comment?
tonight. No, not tonight. I will close public comment. We will move on to our next agenda item, and that is the consent agenda. On the consent agenda for tonight is approve the minutes from August 8th. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
I'll second.
Second. Moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Carries 7-0. Thank you. And we're now on to the regular agenda item, for which I think almost everybody is here. I have about 10 speaker slips. If you want to speak and have not yet turned in a speaker slip, please put one down at Dan's end of the table and pass it up to me. I'm going to call the first person and the second person as we go. The first person is Sid Young, and the second is Karen Demore.
Are we gonna do the presentation first,
Yeah, the
or?
presentation.
I'm sorry.
Sit down, Sid.
Hold on a second.
I'm so anxious. Yes, thank you.
I'm so tired. How long is it?
We'll wait
It's
till-
really long, Sid.
Yeah. Lisa wants, yeah, I am very sorry, Lisa.
That's okay.
I haven't done that in quite a while.
That's true, we haven't done presentation for quite a while.
Here we have.
Well, yeah, that's true, but not a lot.
Here it comes. So, this presentation is posted as a PDF with the supporting documents for this meeting. So if you're watching on video or whatever, anyway, it's there. And so this is Cypress Point Affordable Housing Community at 11 acres at Carlos and Sierra. The this image is the buildings are a simulation just for size and location only. Basically, the project we all know by now, this is proposed now 71 units, and the buildings here in the image they're two-story buildings with 3 to 4 plexes in each building, and they're designed to blend with the home size and spacing of the surrounding neighborhood, and they're clustered to preserve the a green belt around it. And that will have a walking trail which will be available to the community. The facilities that that are offered for the residents, the community room, laundry, computer lab, after-school program space and all that, I'm guessing that's gonna be for the residents there. I know in the past it's come up that if people were to use that community room and drive into the neighborhood, that's not wanted. So, but I'm not speaking for the applicant, but anyway, so there's that. Okay, so I wanna go over the approval process. This is something we, at least the MCC hasn't done before, and I don't believe the planner has either. This is a two-phase approval process. And normally we just do a coastal development permit. In this case, first, there's going to be an amendment to the LCP, the Local Coastal Program. For that, there will be 3 public hearings, first at the Planning Commission, then at the Board of Supervisors, and then at the Coastal Commission, which will they'll consider certifying the amendment. The local government is not required to do CEQA analysis for an LCP amendment. CEQA is the California Environmental Quality Act. That, in this case, will be done, or what they call a functional equivalent of CEQA, will be done by the Coastal Commission when they consider the amendment. However, the application, as you all know, provides information that's normally similar to what's found in a CEQA document, and that's provided to assist the Coastal Commission in their review. And now here, I'm guessing that if they need more information, they will ask for it. But anyway, that's what that material was submitted for. So what we're doing tonight basically is just, we're in phase one, and so the issue is just the LCP amendment, which I'll get to in a moment. Then following that, phase two of this will be the normal process for a coastal development permit for any development project. And there you'll have the Coastside Design Review Committee. There'll be a public hearing there. They review all projects in the Midcoast that have a residential component, and their job is to make sure that this project blends with the neighborhood. Then you will see the CEQA document then. The county has to do that for the project, and what this is information I got from the planning director. He said they'll consider the Coastal Commission review and determine what other analyses or studies might be required. They will do an initial study, that's a specific term for evaluating the issues and deciding what type of CEQA document is required, such as a mitigated declaration, or what we call a NEGDEC, or a full EIR. That will be decided at that point. The document is, then any CEQA document like that is published for several weeks for public review and written comment to the planner. Then there will be a public hearing at the planning decision, who is the decision maker, and they will decide whether to adopt the CEQA document and whether to approve the project. The Midcoast Council is not a decision maker, just so you all know that. We're just advisory. So I just wanted to put this, add this piece in here, because for 2.5 years now, we've been waiting for this key pending Midcoast Long Range Planning Project, which some of you may remember. This was required by the Coastal Commission in 2012 as part of the LCP update, and it is intended to develop a comprehensive transportation management plan to address cumulative traffic impacts of Midcoast development on Highway 1 and 92, including policies for this plan. It would include policies to offset and mitigate for significant cumulative impacts of residential development on public access to the beach. So this project actually started in 2014, and the last document we have seen was released in March of 2016. That was a draft report. It included, it recommended system improvements, alternative transportation standards, evaluated mandatory substandard lot merger, lot retirement, and traffic mitigation fees for new development. So we have yet to see the final draft, and we are told now that it will be presented in October. Obviously, it would have been very helpful to have had that at this point as we comment on this project, but we don't have it yet. So there's that. So back to the process of the approvals. So there's another, what we're doing here tonight, this is a planning permit application referral. So the county planning staff reviews projects. They include a request to various agencies for review and comment in their area of expertise. This information is then used by staff in preparation for their report for the decision makers. So for this project, the referrals were sent to the staff of the county building department, the public works department, environmental health, to the Coastside Fire Protection District, to Montero Water and Sanitary District, which is our locally owned, and we have a locally elected board of directors there. It was sent to Sonoma State Anthropological Studies Center, that's to review cultural resources. California Department of Fish and Game, Caltrans, Samtrans, the Coastal Commission staff, and us. We don't have any staff, but anyway, or expertise, I suppose. But anyway, here we are, and that's what we're considering tonight. I just wanted to point out, since we have no staff, but we do have to comply with the Brown Act for open government, meaning a quorum of this council cannot discuss issues before the council outside of a public meeting. So 1 or up to 3 council members could meet to prepare a report or a draft such as this letter tonight. We're limited to that. And in this case, I'm the chief author of this draft letter, and And I want to thank Claire and Dave for reviewing it and going over it, and also to all members of the public over the past few years who have given us your comments and come to the workshops and all that. Thank you. So this is statements from the letter that we're looking at tonight. The key challenge to this project is the isolated rural site without adequate transit or bike pedestrian facilities, leaving residents depending on their automobiles to reach jobs and services on already congested roads. Let me just point out that these words from the letter, this is just me that drafted the letter. It hasn't been approved.
But you
and
nailed it.
Well, this is, basically, this is what I hope to hear from people tonight, whether these points, whether you agree or disagree. I mean, does this letter need to change, or do you agree with these things? That's the kind of thing, that would be helpful. Okay, so to the LCP amendment, which is this first phase that we're looking at now, there's three things that this amendment will do. It amends the zoning regulations to reduce the maximum number of dwelling units for this parcel from 148 to 71. So that's reduced by over half. The second thing, it amends the land use plan to reduce the zoning designation from medium-high to medium-density residential. And the last thing is to amend the LCP policy that to allow for 100% of the units apart from the manager's unit to serve low or moderate income households. Now, you'll notice I have an arrow there because, okay, the two pictures below, the one on the left is the current plan for the area, which was approved in the 80s, and it has, well, whatever it has, but this new one, the applicant has submitted this plan, and throughout the documents it says that this will be all for low income. So there's a discrepancy there, which you'll see when you read our comments that we asked for that. Okay, so affordability and residency preferences for local workers. A key project objective submitted by the applicant is to improve the jobs housing balance and jobs housing fit in the Midcoast region by providing affordable dwelling units near Midcoast jobs. Now, to define those two terms, jobs housing balance measures the balance between the number of housing units and the number of jobs in an area. And a balance between the two reduces the number of vehicle trips to and from outside the area. And then jobs housing fit is a little different. It measures the local housing prices versus the income distribution of local workers. Thus, whether workers in an area can find housing that they can afford near their jobs. So the submittal says specifically a portion of the units would include a preference for households who already live or work in the region. So this is just a preference, but only a portion of the units. So these are the pieces of our letter. So the comment in the letter on this says, MCC would prefer that the preference apply to all units. Every new residential unit that does not provide affordable housing for our local workforce adds to our coastal jobs housing imbalance and traffic congestion. MCC requests that the proposed LCP amendment match the rest of the submittal regarding low-income affordability. And please clarify how the proposed income restrictions would provide a coastside jobs housing fit. Construction phasing. So the applicant requests construction of all 71 units in one phase with one building permit. Unless the Planning Commission, so this is once again from the Planning Director, he says, unless the Planning Commission, the Board of Supervisors, or the Coastal Commission, those are the decision makers, unless they require that the project be built in phases, the building permit for the entire project can be issued as soon as all relevant code requirements have been addressed. So people are always asking, what's going to happen when? When do we have to speak up? So this issue, if nobody says anything, will just flow in, you know, unless one of these decision-making bodies says, no, this has to be in the stages, that's what's planned. Now, just to point out that the Midcoast has a residential growth rate limit in the LCP, and it limits new residential construction to 40 dwelling units per year. New second units are included in the annual limit. However, no second units are allowed in multifamily housing. Now, that follows then that if this project went forward, they would stay at medium density, whereas the surrounding neighborhood of single-family homes could put in second units and might actually end up being more dense than the project. Also, this limit is applied at the time the building permit is issued, and then there's an exception for units with affordability restrictions, such as this project. You can extend the annual limit, but the growth rate 3-year average must not exceed 40 units per year, and that's an LCP policy. There's no getting around that. So we're talking about 3-year average, no more than 40.
Excuse me, so that includes other people that may wanna build on a vacant lot that live here already, or just this project?
Everything total 40 units. So if this project gets a building permit for 71 units, that means there's a limited number of other people that can get permits in that 3-year period. So the MCC comment on this says, approving more than the annual limit of 40 residential units per year cannot be justified if many of those units will go to residents commuting to jobs out of the area. So public transit. So we have Samtrans Route 17. At the project site, you've got the southbound bus stops at Highway 1 and Carlos. Safe crossing is needed. The northbound bus stops at 14th Street. The parallel trail is needed to make that section walking along there safer. On weekdays, it's 1 hour, and weekends, it's every 2 hours. This route reaches coastside job hubs in Half Moon Bay, Princeton, and Pacifica. It's 10 minutes to Lindemar, 25 minutes to downtown Half Moon Bay, according to the bus schedule. But there's no weekday number 17 service southbound in the morning or northbound in the afternoon when the route follows Sunshine Valley Road. The nearest stop at those times is well outside the quarter-mile range of convenience for people walking to the bus. It's a half a mile to 7th and Main and 3/4 mile to Etheldor and Sunshine Valley. So the applicant proposes a mitigation traffic number 5B that would remove the bus stop at the Lighthouse Hostel and reroute all the buses via Sunshine Valley Road so that they would no longer go along this section of highway. Then they say it would be all fixed. So the MCC comment, are you ready? MCC comment explains how this would actually diminish the bus service at the project site. Without convenient school, commuter bus service at this location on the highway corridor, or a project-sponsored shuttle to and from local jobs, this project cannot be justified. So moving on, these images are from the 2012 Highway 1 Safety and Mobility Study, concept plans for this area, and specifically at the Lighthouse and 16th Street and Carlos that are right close together. The parallel trail will follow, it's not there yet, but it will follow Carlos Street and Moss Beach and share the coastal trail north of 16th via Main Street up into Montera. And the coastal trail 2-stage highway crossing would be there at the Lighthouse. There's raised median, or they also proposed, it could be an overcrossing at that road cut there. And then this is in the mobility study, that Carlos Street would then be right turn only. So, MCC comments on the bike, pedestrian safety, and mobility. The need for safe highway crossing at the Lighthouse 16th cannot be brushed aside by saying there is no need for residents to cross the highway because the bus stop has been removed. Two crossing concepts were included in the 2012 mobility study, a raised median refuge island for 2-stage crossing and an overcrossing to the south where the road cut makes that feasible. If this housing project is to proceed, the parallel trail segment in this area must be prioritized and implemented at a minimum between downtown Moss Beach and 14th Street. Now, highway access and safety, and just a little definition here. LOS means level of service, and that's a A to F grade that traffic engineers assign. It measures wait time, usually for the person waiting at the two-way stop, but it could be a signal. So at Carlos Street, the applicant proposes mitigation traffic 2B to decrease hazards by closing Carlos north of the project entrance to all vehicles except emergency services. The MCC comment is the mobility study and Connect the Coast Side show this intersection as right turn only, entering the highway, and continued use of the center left turn lane eastbound into Carlos. MCC prefers that plan. Visibility of rerouting Carlos to 16th for safer vehicle highway access needs further analysis. At Ballamar Etheldor and at the Lighthouse 16th, the applicant proposes to address the level of service by restricting peak hour left turns entering the highway at these intersections. The MCC comment is, as long as there is a lane space on Valmar so that left turning vehicles do not block those turning right, then turning movements should not be restricted simply to achieve a better LOS rating. Is similarly significant at Valmar because Valmar you'd have to go all around to get to Wenke Way. And then a similar right turn only restriction proposed for the Lighthouse 16th during the PM peak period seems unnecessary to address LOS at that lightly used intersection. I think there's like 3 houses on that street. And then at California Wenke, at the highway there, they propose mitigation traffic 1A to address LOS by converting the intersection control at California Wenke to roundabout or signal. That would be determined by an intersection control evaluation study that's required by Caltrans. California meets the signal warrant under existing conditions. Basically, I think that's probably the case for a number of intersections in the area, but the actual implementation usually comes with some kind of a project. So the MCC comment is additional project trips at this intersection should be recalculated for keeping Carlos open, because they were assuming that those people from Carlos would go over to California. And should also consider that all new and reassigned traffic will not necessarily use California for highway access. When a queue builds, motorists often choose among the 3 other adjacent intersections to spread out the wait time to enter the highway. The MCC and the community are adamantly opposed to any more traffic signals in the Midcoast. A signal at California stopping highway traffic and added pollution spewing stacking lanes further splitting our town would destroy the community vision for a context appropriate village circulation plan as was outlined in the safety and mobility study. A roundabout at each end of Moss Beach would calm traffic without stopping it, provide safe pedestrian crossings and convenient U-turns to avoid making left turns onto the highway, improving LOS at all intersections. Oh wow, okay, so this, I just added these slides on. This is a complete set of project objectives that were submitted. I'm not gonna go over those, but they're there for your reference. Then I know a lot of people have brought up the issue of water and sewer capacity. There was a letter from Ontario Water Sanitary a couple of years ago about this. This is our local public ownership. Ontario and Moss Beach own this water and sewer district with a locally elected board of directors, and they're right there. They are members of the Joint Powers Authority for the Sewer Authority Midcoast side. The LCP designates affordable housing as priority land use for which water and sewer capacity is reserved. The district public works plan, monitored by the Coastal Commission and the county, required reserved water capacity for the affordable housing site. The district's sewer engineer will evaluate impacts and requirements when specific project plans are submitted. We don't have that yet. That comes with the CDP application. Project-specific infrastructure upgrades would be paid by the developer. I talked to the engineer just the other day about that work they're doing at 16th, because that relates to Montero Sanitary, and he said he won't be commenting on this referral. There's not enough information, so it's premature for that. Okay, what else? Oh, and then also there was some concern about local streets because they're narrow. I just wanted to point out that the actual right-of-way of these streets is probably quite more generous than would appear. The list on the left, 50 feet wide, and the list on the right, those are 40 feet wide. Some of them widen out at Etheldor. And then if you want more information on CEQA, there it is. Like I say, this is a PDF on our website. So that's my presentation.
Thank you, Lisa. Sorry for not letting you present that. Do we have clarifying? Do we have clarifying questions on the presentation from the council before we go to the public?
I do have several clarifying questions, Dave and Lisa and Claire, but let me just ask the three of you authors of this, whether it's even worth it to ask these questions. I kind of feel it's unfair for you three to have to answer for a project that's not your project, in which you are not, you know, creating the data to which I'm trying to get answers to. So I don't know if these are even rhetorical questions or not.
Can I respond to that? Yeah, we're not the applicant. We have studied these documents and reported. I think what I reported reflects what they, you know, if I copy it out of their document, I'm confident in it. And so if it's that kind of a thing, like, you know, it wouldn't be helpful if you
Get closer to the microphone.
They're not
The
amplified.
microphones are not amplified, they're for the video.
You're welcome to come stand up here if you like. It's informal, okay? Or anywhere you can fit. Come on in. Yeah, we don't have a budget either. Yeah, Chris, if you could, keep two things in mind. We are not the applicant. We can, you know, advise on the process and talk about the letter. We're just working with the information we have now. This is initial comments. There'll be plenty of other opportunities to comment to the decision makers. And also when the CDP application comes to us, we'll have another early referral process like we're doing here, and there'll be more information then. And yeah, my goal is to focus on if we got the letter right.
Right, okay, so let me just ask then a couple of quick, maybe administrative questions. Is MidPenn's request to apply for all 71 building permits in the same calendar year, or one building permit for 71 residences, part of the scope of this agenda item?
This is, no.
No.
We're commenting on the whole packet because we can.
Yeah.
But basically, this phase is just the LCP amendment to downzone the parcel to less density, reduce the number of units, and make them all affordable.
Okay.
Can I say something? Sure. I think you can comment on what the letter says about that issue, not about the issue itself.
Right, okay. So regarding the preference for local residents, again, please just stop me if it's not within the scope. I'm trying to stay within the scope, but it is hard to know where those boundaries are. I've seen a lot of correspondence, read the documents. Am I reading it wrong, or do we still not know exactly what the metrics for this preference
You are correct.
rating are?
You are
Okay.
correct.
Also, has there been any outreach by MidPenn to specific local businesses and employers? I saw that they looked at the 2000 census with regards to jobs available and whatnot. But has there been any specific outreach to local businesses and employers to identify the number and or demographics of locals needing housing?
That's
Or is
something
this
we
all
wouldn't know.
theoretical?
We wouldn't know that.
We wouldn't know that, okay. I saw some correspondence from one of our residents. Are there any financial documents available? In reading the documents that MidPenn presented, one of them was an executive summary that listed participants, which would include MidPenn and county and whatnot. But the email that I read from one of our residents really brought up the financial side of it. Who
This-
is participating in this project? Do
This
we
is
have
an
financials?
Okay, keep in mind, we're commenting on an LCP amendment. The CDP, maybe you could go there, but we're not there yet.
Okay, that's fine. I'm not
Yeah.
trying to find holes.
No,
I what I didn't see in the documents, that's just what I'm trying to bring up. With regard to Resist Density's request that the MCC ask for a full EIR before providing comments and recommendations. based on your presentation, it looks like in the second phase of approval, there will be an EIR equivalent, but
The
not a
second
full.
phase, we're familiar with, a coastal development permit. We've done this many times. And so the order the county has versus design review, then the CEQA document. So they do an initial study. There's a link, we had a couple of workshops here on land use planning and application. It's posted on our website, and the link there, take you right to, oh, here's the CEQA thing right here. That link right there, it takes you to the initial study, and you'll see the checklist that they use, and then depending on how that comes out, it tells them whether negative declaration will work or whether they need a full EIR. It's all set up in the state law.
Okay, oh, again, I'm sorry if it's not within the scope, I'm just going through the documents. The referral that we were provided still lists the California School Employees Association as the owner. I thought MidPenn had an option to purchase, which they had exercised to purchase this land. Who is the owner of this land right now?
It must be the school district, otherwise it wouldn't, their name wouldn't be there as the owner. I mean, that's the kind of thing the county checks, if the document's right, you know?
Well, that's why I bring it up, because it's being presented as MidPenn is the owner. MidPenn's website and documents say we own and operate and blah, blah, blah.
No, they own and operate other sites, not this one.
Okay, but, well, that's confusing then, as to they are promoting it with language that makes it seem like they are gonna own and operate.
It might
this.
be the
They will,
buildings.
okay, they will own and rent the units. They will continue to own it.
But they
will
don't
not
own
be
it right
sold.
now.
No, they don't own it yet.
And so I guess a rhetorical that you don't have to answer that I just wanna know is, when is MidPenn gonna own this? Who is actually responsible for this? Because I also read further that the county is gonna be the applicant to the CCC, and the county is gonna decide,
So Chris, think about Valamar Bluff. It's
yes,
going all the way through with the project developer not owning the property. It's not a requirement you own the property to do the development.
I hear you, but one of MidPenn's points that they were making is that they're gonna have strict oversight of this because they own and operate their
Okay,
properties.
so you're talking about their management practices when it's all built. And you'll see this at Moonridge or any of their other facilities. They maintain ownership and they rent the units. That way they have control over what goes on there.
I'm sorry if I got off target, but that was one of the first things I saw on the referral.
And that will
document.
probably not come up during the CDP.
And let's see, I think I had one last question. Thank you, authors of this letter. Somewhere, you mentioned that section 3.16 of the LCP allows the Board of Supervisors to increase the number of units permitted if this location, quote, threatens the implementation of affordable housing on a designated site by prohibiting the developers from building when circumstances are uniquely favorable for a period of time. This would be a justification for allowing them to have the 71 unit. That's why I asked if this was in the scope. Because this was from a letter from the project manager for MidPenn to Mike Schaller, the senior planner, citing that there are unique circumstances, and I'm just wondering, are there unique and favorable circumstances? The ones provided in the letter seem generic to
Well-
any time at any place.
Right, and that's why I asked Steve Bonowitz about that, and I said, so who's gonna decide? At what point will it be decided that they get to, whether they get this dispensation or whatever? And that was the answer I read. It was in the presentation. He said that unless the planning, that's what will happen, unless the planning commission or another decision maker says, no, you need to put a condition in this, that needs to be done in phases.
So MidPenn doesn't have to make any stronger argument about these favorable or unique circumstances.
From what Steve said, it sounded like what they said was good enough for him.
And that's his opinion as the
Yeah,
community
he's not a
director.
decision maker, right.
I would just ask everyone to read the letter from MidPenn's project manager, second page of what these unique and favorable circumstances are. Thank you very much for answering my questions.
Dan?
Lisa, you mentioned, you put on the slide some images from the mobility study. And just wanted to, th- these are old illustrations. They don't really apply at this time.
Oh, let me say, this was approved in 2012 after I don't know how many years the community worked on this, and this is continually referred to. And even now, Steve Monowitz is saying that this, the Connected Coast side, it supports this and working with this, considering this
The
ability
details
study.
of this or the
I'm not saying that it
concept?
will be built exactly, this is a concept. This document is a concept.
Yeah, but there's also details on it.
But it's we ran into this with the Crossings project, where there were medians in Moss Beach, and they said, but this is just a concept, and this might not work. It's not a given that we will get this. All I'm bringing this up is that, okay, this was a plan, a concept that we looked at and we liked, and let's keep looking at this now, is all we're saying.
Okay, in regards to the roundabout on both ends of Moss Beach, you mentioned that it will improve LOS at all intersections. Now, how do we know that?
Well, if they design a roundabout, they, like they've already done the, what do you call it? The complete feasibility study for Cypress. And they determined that the roundabout is preferable to a signal, but that in the future, a double lane would be required for the Highway 1 portion of the roundabout. And so a similar study would be done for any intersection improvement. Caltrans requires that, because if the roundabout is feasible, that's what you have to do.
Okay, I'm not sure that you answered my question about how do we know
Maybe I
that it
didn't.
will improve the LOS. Tell you what, I
All
do
right.
want to make sure there's a lot of people in the room tonight. I want to make sure that everybody has an opportunity to make their comment. I'd really like to listen to the community, and if needed, we can go around more than one time.
You said I didn't answer your question.
About how do we know?
Okay, so if the roundabouts are designed so they function correctly, then the other intersections in the middle of town have that opportunity. If it's a busy time of day, and you can't make a left, you make a right, and you go around and you turn around the roundabout.
If the traffic is slowed down so much that it's bumper to bumper, how can a car get in on the road?
Well, I'm not gonna go into
How is
the
it
actual
not-
design
Okay,
details of the
that's, so we don't
roundabout.
know, we don't know for certain that it will improve.
You're saying we should remove
No-
that wording
Nothing,
from our?
nothing in life is certain but death and taxes.
Just-
Brandon?
Just saying that.
So, will we have the opportunity to ask questions to anyone from the Mid-Penn? So they won't-
Not for this letter.
Not tonight.
All right, well, about like a future opportunity to ask them further.
I kind of think that opportunity may be mostly over with the workshops that they held and the pre-application workshop. Well, they printed their answers for that. That's part of this packet.
That is a
But,
disappointment.
so when this goes to the decision makers, they'll make a presentation, but I don't think the public gets to ask them
Well, I
questions.
still demand that they come here.
Why aren't they here tonight?
We have enough to do without lighting into
Well, I
them.
do demand that they come to the next
So
meeting.
Brandon, we can't demand anything.
Can I just say why that's not a good idea? Because we're focused, this is now our turn to submit our comments. And we need to hear from you if we got it right. This isn't the time to tear into them. This is our time to talk about this. That's how I feel about it anyway.
Any other comments, Brandon?
No.
Any clarifying questions?
I don't know if this is clarifying or
Not
not,
public
but I
comment
have a
yet.
couple of questions about the discrepancies. Down with the project is within a quarter-mile walking distance of the Coastside Grocery Market. That's not a grocery market. That's a glorified liquor store. And, no, it is. I love it. I love it, but that's what it is. You can't buy a pound of meat or anything.
So,
Um,
can I?
yeah.
Got good
Well-
sourdough bread.
So
Then-
wait,
Wait, I'm not done
We
yet.
are not gonna get through this meeting if people keep interrupting or talking over people. Please be civil. Everybody will get their chance.
Can I have 30 more seconds?
Absolutely.
And then the Seton Coastside Medical Center. That's not a medical center. It's a,
Right.
whatever that is
So-
up there.
My reasoning, so this last page that I didn't go over, the discrepancies, there's a lot of details in here, and it's not comprehensive. But basically, these are project-specific. When we get the CDP, When we're looking at this project-specific documents, then you bring up all these details. This isn't the time yet. I mean, this letter would be 50 pages long if we were gonna go into
Well, those
that,
two
so-
things are kind of important,
Well,
Well,
they're
that is
not
the
important
name-
for the project
that
planning
is
to
the
do a
name
staff
of the
report for the
facility.
LCP amendment.
not medical center.
It is, I don't know, do you know what the actual name of the facility is?
Seton Coastside.
I believe it's actually something else, but in any case, we can look at that more, think about that more as we go on to the other parts. Does anybody else have another clarifying question on the
No.
council? Okay, so ground rules, keep it civil, no discussion back and forth in the audience. Please, no clapping at comments. I would request that if what you want to say has already been said by somebody else, that you only mention the things where you feel differently. That's your choice, but I would request that. We're gonna give everybody 3 minutes, and then we're gonna ask you to step down and let somebody else speak. We will come back around if we are not exhausted and we are not kicked out of the room, which we will not be. Sid is gonna be first, and then Karen DeMoore, but I also have one very brief summary of an email to read first from Patricia Lynn. She had a fairly long letter. Most of them were on the project itself, not the LCP amendment, but she does not think the traffic study is sufficient, and she thinks the alternative analysis should have considered other locations. Sid, it's all yours.
Most residents do not want a 71-unit complex in spite of the need for extra housing. It's a poor site for a complex far from over-the-hill jobs, places undue burden on the low-income residents who will have to spend extra money to get places, such as to work or to shop or even taking their kids to school. I honestly feel like the developer has no idea there's no school buses on the coast side. It just seems that way, because they're putting it in this totally remote, obtuse location. And then, this is my pet peeve, the complex is boasting a community center, which the Midcoast sorely lacks. As a taxpayer since 1988, I have sent my property taxes to the county for 30 years, and there are very few amenities in the Midcoast that have been allocated to us. It all goes down to Half Moon Bay. I feel that instead of families, the affordable housing should go to deserving seniors who won't add to the horrendous traffic and commute over the hill, or drive their kids to school, or own as many cars, like 3 per family. And gas is sneaking back up to $4 a gallon, I'd like to mention. Let's see, where am I here? Wrote too many things. This complex has taken little notice of the lack of adequate public transit or school buses. The recent traffic plan instead tries to force cars to flow in and out of the complex via surface streets along narrow roads where adults, kids, and pets walk, instead of addressing the terrible access for ingress and egress off of what should be the main and only entrance for over across from the lighthouse. I would like to suggest, Ellie, that the county, that this project in this proposed location has absolutely no merit whatsoever as planned. It is too high density, too remote for low-income residents, and will add too many more trips on our clogged roads. I suggest the county acquire the land and build the Midcoast a decent community center, which we actually sorely need and deserve. And low-income people need to be near jobs, shopping, transit, and in a community with school buses. I think I had something else to say that came up while I was thinking. Oh yeah, 142 parking spots, 210 people according to that. And only a portion of it is gonna be for locals. So where do you think they're gonna be driving from? Their friends are gonna come over here from somewhere else. They're gonna be driving over the hill. It's just gonna add to the traffic, which is already horrendous.
Thank you. And And I would like to remind people, please try to confine your comments to the LCP amendment and/or our letter, or issues you think we missed in the letter. After Karen, it will be Greg. Okay.
Hi, thanks for all your work on this, Lisa, and Dave, and Claire. My name is Karen Moore. I'm representing Resist Density, and our organization is promoting the sensible planning and protection for the San Mateo County Midcoast. We recognize the need for affordable housing. However, MidPenn's current proposal is just too many units in the wrong location. The MCC should oppose this project as currently proposed for the following reasons. And this is a letter that you've all received, and it's out there if anyone wants a copy of it, and it's on our website, resistdensity.org. There are dangerous traffic impacts that the project as currently proposed will result in numerous significant and unavoidable traffic impacts they don't have mitigation for. The project also as currently proposed will increase congestion and negative traffic impacts, which is a violation of the local coastal plan, and to the detriment of both the community and the new Mid-Penn residents. This is also going to add added burden to an already failing sewage system. There's been documented over 100 sewage spills since 2001. We came out with a report on that. It's well documented. This project will add new sewage lines, which only exacerbate the serious problems of the existing system. Also, Mid-Penn ignores the need for a phased development. The local coastal plan limit of 40 units per year, there's a reason for it. It's to ensure that roads, utilities, public works facilities, and community infrastructure are not overburdened by rapid residential growth. Also, there's an inadequate environmental review. As I mentioned, there's the traffic analysis. It avoids any consideration of what the traffic impacts of a roundabout, new signal lights, the closing of Carlos Street, left turn restrictions would have. Also, the sewage analysis, their technical reports don't even acknowledge that there's a troubled state in the existing system. There's also an acknowledgement by Mid-Penn's documents of significant impact of hazardous materials during construction, and their preliminary evaluation promises a site management plan that will later be developed, but there are no details provided now. So what this does is it puts the MCC in a position of being asked to make recommendations without the benefit of a required environmental analysis. By our sources, amendments to the local coastal plan must comply with CEQA, even though a technical EIR need not be prepared. Mid-Penn has not provided analysis that complies with CEQA. So the MCC is in an untenable position of making recommendations without knowledge of the future impacts of the proposed project. Mid-Penn's proposal will require more than changes to the LCP. Changes are required to San Mateo County's zoning map and zoning text amendment, an amendment to San Mateo County's general plan, and proposed changes to the planned unit development designation for this site. These zoning and general plan changes are not merely technical changes. They will result in foreseeable physical environmental changes, meaning the development of the site. Thus, adequate environmental
Karen,
review is in form of an EIR is needed for the public and the MCC to adequately evaluate this project. Thank you.
Greg, and after Greg, Dolores.
I'm Greg Diegas. I live in Montera, and do want to thank you all for your service and energy. I can understand it's a taxing endeavor. I read over 1,000 pages myself and looking at this stuff. I realize the narrow issue tonight is commenting on amending the LCP. And I've spoken and traded emails with over 24 residents during the last couple of weeks. And before I request a specific action from you regarding the narrow agenda item, allow me to provide some context. I've not found a single resident who supports this project. People are even nervous of undermining their own water and sewer security and reliability and pollution fines stemming from sewer overflows by adding merely new single-family homes on existing lots. Now, I realize the MCC has focused a lot on traffic, but the big picture here is that an era of climate crisis that we're in gives us an insecure and unsustainable position in almost all of our infrastructure. The roads, the sewer, the water, the fire protection, and et cetera. And I will be quantifying these deficiencies in coming days. There are inconsistencies, for instance, in Clemens's report from the MWSD. He's basically wrong. We are in a deficit situation in a drought condition on water. Similarly, the sewer system is overburdened. I think JQ has done a great job on that. I've estimated the cost based on information from the national engineering firms between 180 and $360 million to replace that sewer system. And if we cross a tipping point, guess who's going to pay for most of that? So the big picture in governance is that we shouldn't have any major housing or development, as they call it, any population expansion, unless we have an analysis that contrasts our capacity as infrastructure with the long-term planned allowable population. And we need to guarantee that existing residents aren't going to be penalized financially or otherwise for the risks outsiders want to take by putting stuff here. Now, there's no benefit to existing residents from the Cypress Point project. There's only risk and harm. The beneficiaries of the project are financiers and builders, plus the current property owner. And Chris, I have a spreadsheet that shows who earns how much. The names are unidentified, but it depends on $1.5 billion nonprofit. Their board is real estate syndication firms, commercial lenders. They're a conduit for the financial services industry, and they're getting a double return compared to normal residential rental returns. So to conclude, regarding the decision you face tonight, I'm asking you to take whatever you think is the right approach to delay and disapprove this project. And if that means recommending that the density stay where it is to make this project more obviously unappealing, then please do that. But whatever you think makes sense, please explain to us how it works to the benefit, your action works to the benefit of the residents and the visitors when you're done. And I'm also available to assist in supplemental analyses. I would really relish the chance to be commissioned, deputized, whatever, to go work with Beverly Marshall and Clemens. And I have a lot of respect for them, but they haven't always come up with the right answer. Thank you for your time.
Dolores, followed by JQ.
Hello, I'm Dolores Silva. I live in Moss Beach, and I want to talk about this zoning change. We've been stuck with this PUD since 1985 or 86 for 148 units. Now, that was approved at a time when there weren't even water or sewer connections, and there hadn't been for maybe as much as 20 years, maybe even more. And there weren't any sewer and water connections available for another at least 20, 25 years after that. Now, why it was approved in the first place, who knows? But we're being held to that number of 148 as if that's been approved, so hey, they're making a concession by reducing to 71. Where did this number ever get justified? And the 71, I don't think we have a reason to say that 71 units is what is okay and approve that when nobody has done an EIR to say that that site is even suitable for housing. It was a military site. I think that our request for an EIR is only the prudent thing to do. I mean, we need to know what's there, and we need to know how it's going to affect the environment. And so whatever we need to do, whatever number of units or non-units, or what is the proper thing to do with that site, and how will we know until there is an EIR that really finds out what's there and how it affects the environment, the creek, the Farallon whole system there preserved, and here we are thinking about, oh, 71 units is a good concession. It's not. We need to start with that. That zoning change, why? It suits Midpen, exactly what Midpen does. Does it suit us? Does it even suit the owner? I mean, if they change the zone to this, the owner will be stuck with that. Who else is going to be able to possibly build it or buy it? We're stuck with it because we live here. I think it really needs a lot more scrutiny than whether the traffic works or the mitigation is enough. We're not trying to get anything out of it, we just wanna know more than what is being said, and the studies are inadequate.
Thank you. JQ. And after JQ, Christopher Davis.
Hi, my name's J.Q. Oswine. I'm a Moss Beach resident. And although I'm also a member of Resist Density, I'd like to make a statement on my own behalf as a community member today. I have reviewed MidPenn's application and have noted several concerns with regard to the suitability of this site for a 71-unit housing project. Today I want to comment specifically on the environmental assessments for hazardous materials that were done for this submission. And although MidPenn's consultants acknowledged that the site was a former World War II military installation, their assessments of potential contamination were limited by MidPenn's agreed-on scope of services and did not fully account for all potential contaminants. Despite the limited scope, the applicant's reports recommend no further investigation or remedial action for hazardous materials. The consultants note that this site is not listed in any state database such as GeoTracker or EnviroStore as known hazardous material site, and then they use this fact to imply that the site is free of hazardous materials. Obviously, absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. It's not listed as a known hazardous material site because it's never been tested, nor has its military history been evaluated by a government agency. However, the site's military history, as well as its abandonment in 1969, forewarned the possibility of hazardous materials still being present. It's especially noteworthy that the consultants did not observe the presence of asbestos during their site reconnaissance, considering that almost all building materials used during the 1930s through the 1970s contained asbestos, and further that the official recognition of asbestos dangers occurred long after the site was abandoned in 1969. It's almost certain that the site still contains asbestos. There's even a record of asbestos abatement by MWSD just around their water tanks, but there are no records of any type of cleanup on other portions of the site. The oversight or intentional omission of asbestos in the environmental assessment makes the entire environmental review suspect. The fact that they highlighted the likely presence of lead based on historical use and neglected mention of similar historical use of asbestos suggests a willful intent to downplay the likely presence or dangers of asbestos. It further indicates that the performed environmental assessments are inadequate and incomplete and therefore do not adequately inform a safe site development plan, nor do they even justify a zoning change. It's further possible that other toxins could still be present in specific areas of the site that were not adequately tested. For example, there was a steam plant with an underground fuel tank. There was also a motor pool, vehicle maintenance area, and a gas pump, and likely also included an underground tank for that. The Navy may also have used part of the site to dump or bury refuse or waste, as was common military practice at that time. The scope of MidPenn's environmental assessment did not include subsurface or other invasive assessments. Because it cannot be known with certainty which specific areas of the site could contain hazardous materials, soil samples should be obtained from adequate depths around the entire site and in all areas where the soil will be disturbed by digging, grading, or where runoff could affect other areas that are undisturbed directly. There should be broader testing for underground tanks on the site as well. Thorough testing and appropriate remediation prior to any development are imperative to protect the existing community as well as to
you're 30 seconds over. Could you wrap it up?
As well as to ensure the safety of potential Cypress Point residents. This application should not be considered without a full and complete EIR. Thank you.
Christopher Davis, followed by Harold Herman.
My name's Christy Davis. I'm a 30-year resident of Moss Beach. I want to thank the Midcoast Community Council. I know you're in a tough position advocating for us when you don't have a vote. So anything you can do to make the county council, see our point of view is greatly appreciated. Obviously, downsizing to 71 units over 148 is an improvement, but I also would like to agree with all the previous speakers here who have so eloquently made statements to the effect that, this project is completely inappropriate for this location. I would like to focus, I'd also like to say I'm an environmental chemist, and I work almost exclusively on military base investigations, and it's almost unheard of in this day and age to transfer a military base to public use without thorough sampling and analysis, which is my specialty. So I would like to go with JQ on that and say that it should be required in any environmental review, or CEQA for that matter. I'd like to focus on the traffic, so-called traffic study that accompanies this application. Is it, a quick question, are we still talking, because I certainly didn't see it in your presentation, that they were gonna close Carlos Street and route all the traffic up Etheldor and Sierra Streets?
Yeah, it's in the presentation.
Okay, so that is probably the highest impact that could possibly be made to the community of Moss Beach. I challenge anybody, anywhere, to come up with a more devastating plan. Is there anything you could do to make the traffic impact, which is an environmental impact that must be mitigated according to CEQA, is there anything you could add to that to make it worse? Not only are you gonna make the residents of this unit, this development, go, instead of going 70 yards down the road, drive a quarter mile up the street, over speed bumps, over a dirt section of road that is not even a excuse me, I've had a recent brain injury, so it's not even a county road for a small section of it. Every time a car goes up, there's dust. Not only those people will have to go up through those routes, and Etheldor, where if you have a car and a bicycle that have to pass each other, you've got a life and death situation. All the people that currently live there will no longer be able to have access like they've had for the last 30, 40 years. They will also be impacted. They will also have to go up Etheldor and Sierra Street. It's preposterous. I question whether the people that made this traffic study ever even visited Moss Beach. I work from home. I live on the corner of Sierra and California. I have never seen anybody put one of those black rubber things across the road that counts vehicle traffic either on California or Sierra or Etheldor. If you walk or drive the proposed routes, it would be obvious to you that this is not a route that you would take. And the people that live down there don't take these routes. They take Sierra and Stetson if they have to.
Thank you. You're over 3 minutes. Could you wrap it up?
So anyway, if you would advocate for us on the fact that the traffic study is completely inadequate and completely flawed in their decisions, the community would greatly appreciate it.
Harold, followed by David Lynn.
Yeah, hi, my name is Harold Herman. I live in Moss Beach. I'm speaking on my behalf as a member of the community. Just to add, they had the cables 8 years ago. Maybe they put the cable 8 years ago on the street. Just a hint.
Oh, and we have more people walking dogs than cars.
Yeah, so I'm, a lot was said, I completely agree with the concerns here, but I want to add a additional dimension, which is really the cumulative impact. So right now we're looking at 8 to 10 large-scale developments on the coast side that range from new RV parks, hotels, high-density development, luxury, affordable, commercial. We just got green light for a large brewery, not sure if that happens. And that are all going to be supported by an already failing infrastructure, the roads, sewer, water, you name it. Which is really impacting our safety and mobility. We're already overburned by the traffic. If we have a scenario where we have a major earthquake, tsunami, fire, I think we're just basically stranded on the coast side. Connect the coast side, so really from a higher level point of view, where we have 5 traffic lights in the connect the coast side between Half Moon Bay and the tunnel. We have 14 pedestrian crossings mapped out there at street level. And the report was completed as shown before in March 2016. What gets interesting now is, so they basically missed to document the underlying planning assumptions. They say build-out condition, but I haven't seen the planning assumptions. For instance, Big Wave was approved in 2015. There's no big wave named in the report. So the new study, which hopefully comes out at the end of the year, I wonder how many of these 8 or 10 large-scale developments will be referenced there to reflect current coastal realities. So the hexagon study is a big wave, and that's really where the impact is for us. So 1,500 daily trips generated by a big wave. So this is going to probably branch out into the harbor, and then Cyprus and Highway 1. So this is South Moss Beach. Now we look at Midpen, which is North Moss Beach. And you know, the traffic consultant was pretty creative, so they came up with a draft traffic study. I look at it and I think we can bring it up a level, keep it simple. 71 units, 1 to 3 cars per unit, 3 to 4 trips a day. So that gives you a range of 300 to 800 daily trips in and out of this thing. Plus you have a community center, depending how big and how popular that gets, you can add that too. Now, Moss Beach, so we have one roundabout, a traffic light at Cyprus. We're gonna have one on California, and then a couple of pedestrian crossings, plus, you know, what we saw today, they need to cross over to the lighthouse. So we can imagine close proximity of all these traffic measures, what's gonna happen here, and this will be just a complete nightmare. What that means for people that are not directly impacted, so if you live in the back of Moss Beach, Montera, guess what? Everybody has application on their smartphone. They're gonna get rerouted, 2nd, 3rd Street, which they have Babylon View, Sunshine Valley, come back out, take Evergreen. So all the back roads gonna be flooded. And you know, the latest highlight, and as Chris alluded to, so Carlo's closed. I take Carlo's every day in and out, so I'm gonna be forced to drive other routes, and that adds to the.
Harold, you're at 30 seconds over.
So just wanted to say, I think, based on what I've seen over the last 2.5 years, this is California Coastal Commission, who hopefully will put a stop on it, or the legal route. So please consider donating to resist density, as we try to fight it. Thank you very much.
David Lynn, and followed by Ann Rothman.
Is it hot in here, or is it just me? Well, I agree with the comments made before me. I'm a resident of Montera with my family. We've lived here for over 10 years. We appreciate the low scale, the open space of the area. I think the proposed project is out of character with that. It's high density. It's even the revised project is 10 to 17 units per acre, much higher than the average density in the area. Traffic safety was mentioned. I read the traffic report. I'm a licensed planner, and it seems very inadequate. It does not discuss adequately the trip generation and the, I guess, the workaround of shutting one end of that street off. That street is a one-lane country road, really inadequate for a high density, to serve a high-density housing development. In terms of infrastructure, I think most of us know that infrastructure on the coast is old, it's inadequate. It was built decades ago. It has not been upgraded. Highway 1 is really more of a two-lane country road, and it's increasingly subject to traffic congestion at many hours of the day. When we're building housing developments, I confess I'm a recovering high-density housing developer, and one of the things that's very important is having jobs near housing. We have very few jobs out here. The economy is very thin. It does not grow by very much. In fact, there are no new jobs. So the number of, that was quoted in one of the reports, of 1,400 jobs is very, very hard to believe. The jobs that are in the Bay Area, really, you have to travel to, and that's going to increase traffic dramatically. Finally, the Midpen's alternative analysis we feel is incomplete. There are many very good housing development sites around the Bay Area. Again, I used to scout them out and develop them. And really the adjacency to physical infrastructure as well as social infrastructure, medical, schools, community centers is very important. We just don't have that here. It's a rural area and low density, so we are not in support of the proposed project in any form, and I do strongly recommend a full EIR is conducted. Thank you.
Ann Rothman, followed by Sunny Hibbs.
Hi, I'm Ann, and I'm from Moss Beach, and my concern is that with the LCP, it was never intended to be entirely low-income housing. And if you even look at the old numbers, the only part with 148 units, it was closer to 50 units would have been in total, both low and moderate income housing. That's the first point. But second point I'm more concerned about is the potential for Seton Coastside to be closing. I just saw this in the San Mateo Daily Journal. They're considering closing Seton, both the coastside and in Daly City. That means there will be no medical services for anyone in this development or in the coast or on the coast. That also changes the number of jobs that are on the coast if these facilities close. That means everybody will have to go over the hill to get their service. I think that should be taken into consideration in this case, particularly with everyone who will be here will primarily be low income and need specific services. Also, Mid-Penn showed, when I was looking at some of their, the background on the units, several of the units have to be dedicated for individuals with mental health problems. What concerns me is that if there is anything that happens with these individuals, that they are in crisis and in need, there will be no services available to them. They cannot go to the hospital. There's nowhere close for them to be taken care of. So what happens? The police get called in. And then what? I don't know what's going to happen. And it also presents a quandary for the residents. What are we supposed to do about a situation like this? So I'm just concerned for both them as well as us. Finally, about the changes of direction of where the cars are going to come and go from the facility. I also am concerned that that may interfere with the firehouse and their response times when they need to get out of Kelmore Street, because with everybody now, the way this is situated, I know they're talking about Sierra Street, but people will be commuting up and down Kelmore and Stetson Streets as well. And as you know, that's the route that the firehouse uses a majority of the time when they exit. And if everyone's queuing up California, how are they supposed to get out? How are they supposed to respond? And finally, we are also, according to their documents, in a high fire zone because of our open space. And with the recent fires, I mean, this is something we all should consider. Evacuation may not be easy. And when you have a development of this size and the number of people that will have to be evacuated, that could be very serious in addition to what the people who live here have to go through. So please take into these considerations, and as well as Sam, the overflow, I think, with the sewer system, that's a serious environmental issue that we should consider. So please, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Sunny, followed by Len Erickson.
Hi, thank you for everyone who worked on the draft and put all their hard work in, the Midcoast Council for Area Work, all your work, but I'm afraid that I think most of the people here, and this is a big turnout, actually aren't for this happening at all. So that's a big conflict of interest, definitely. And I just have three main things I want to say. That it's basically the traffic's a problem, it's a problem for the residents, and it's a problem for the children. I was born here, okay? I was born in Montera, and I'm used to having my rural experience, which is growing up right by a huge forest. Now, there isn't much of that wideness of ruralness that Moss Beach has, and if you are going to place a apartment complex all right there where the children will grow up in a rural state where the parents came to have that, it kind of defeats the purpose and makes it an urban plain. And I don't want to live in an urban area. I came here, my parents came here, to live in ruralness. And I think it's really difficult to think that the residents would be okay with this or want this to happen, because it affects their life as people wanting to live in a rural area. And it affects their jobs, because they are not gonna be able to get at they're not gonna be able to get on the highway. The traffic is a huge problem with that, and everyone's gonna be going in the back streets. And I'm not sure if I heard it right, but they were gonna change the buses to go through Sunshine Valley, if I'm not mistaken. I take Sunshine Valley. I don't want any more buses on Sunshine Valley. And that's just a really difficult thing to think about there, is that it will affect all the back streets, and it's gonna affect everyone. One more, urban thing, it's freaking me out. I don't wanna live in an urban place. It's weird. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Len Erickson, followed by Michael Prieto.
Lynn Erickson from El Granada. During the presentation, I noticed discussions of the Highway 1 and roundabouts on it. I also noted that posted on the website was a letter from Steve Monowitz to, among others, Lisa, who gave our report. And in it, Steve said, from our analysis to date, the project will necessitate the installation of a signal and improved crossing at California Avenue. I'd like to make sure that this fact is somehow worked into your letter. It's clearly supposed to come to the community with connect the coast side, I would assume, but that's at an undetermined time down the road. So I think that we should express concern about that.
Thank you, Len. Michael, followed by, I think it's Audrey Patchett.
My name is Michael. I'm from Moss Beach. You asked for feedback on the document that Lisa prepared. In that one section, you talked about streets. You put down that Buena Vista Street is 50 feet wide. You had width for Sierra. Those may be a little bit off. Only portion of Buena Vista is that wide. You get past Montera, it drops to 35 feet.
I was just looking at the survey maps is all. Maybe they're wrong.
The right-of-way is that wide, not the pavement.
Yeah, the pavement, what we have, the streets there are strictly maintained. They were installed by the residents, nobody else. Lincoln, which is at the end, is only 25 feet. And then Washington on the other end that comes off of us is 25 feet. So Sierra, which is directly behind us, is all right from Carlos all the way up to, I think it's Coral, is all maintained by the residents. And yet on the map that they show for the traffic, it makes it look like anybody and their brother can shoot through. So we just wanted to draw that. The only other piece I have to mention about yours is some emphasis on Etheldor itself. The whole area going from south of California Street to the end is so poorly maintained, it's unbelievable. It's barely wide enough to be a legal road. I mean, if you had two emergency vehicles went through there, you might have a cramp, because it is, it's a very rough road. So other than that, I thought you did a nice job. Thank you very much.
Audrey, followed by John Kakunda.
Hi, I'm Audrey Patchett, a Moss Beach resident. I have a few questions from tonight's presentation, or comments about discrepancies. So I just wanted to note, one of the discrepancies I saw was that in the report it said that the Samtrans 17 bus takes 25 minutes from the stop to get to downtown Half Moon Bay, and it technically takes 38 to 44 minutes in the morning to get to there, so that's inaccurate?
I just got that number for from their timetable.
Well, it's double. The reality is it's double.
The morning schedule is different than the midday schedule.
Yeah. And there were some other things, Barbara, like you had mentioned some discrepancies, and my concern is that there just seems like there's a lot being glossed over. Like, oh, it only takes 25 minutes to get downtown. Oh, there's a grocery store and a medical facility in Moss Beach. So all these things are they're not reflecting our reality as residents who live here. So I'm very concerned about that. I'm also concerned about the school impacts. So if this goes through and all of a sudden there are 70 new units, how many kids does that add to our school system? How many kids can Fairlawn take on in 1 year? Can they handle 140 new students?
There's a
I
table,
don't know.
there's a
So-
table in there of attendance over the last few years. We didn't go into that because it's like not an LCP amendment, but it's in there. And it looks like the attendance has been going down, but I don't have the numbers right at hand.
And the estimate from Mid-Penn was 50 students of school age, from elementary through high school.
So again, that to me, I mean, is that a lie? I mean, did they just put lies in here? That
No,
there's
the
no
tables are
way
in there.
there's just 50 kids are gonna live in that. There's no way. And there'll be a lot more than 50 students. I mean, maybe they'll be dispersed across the different schools on the coast, but I mean, this is just not reality, the facts that they're putting in there. That's a big concern of mine. I also wonder if the fire and police can really support 70 additional units in Moss Beach. Can they handle, is there a number of how many more calls they anticipate, and how would our responders accommodate that? Finally, just based on the comments that I saw that MCC is going to make, it just felt to me overall like it was passive, like this is happening, it's a done deal. There were some comments I appreciate, but overall it just feels like we're not really making a stand to say that this isn't right for the coast, and that this isn't for all of the reasons that everybody has talked about tonight. It just doesn't make sense. And my last concern is the width of the street. If you have two cars coming at each other on California, one car has to pull over so another car can pass. I would really like to understand how we would accommodate that with so many new units and, 200 plus more vehicles on our streets.
This comes up and I wonder if you want the street widened.
I think you would, at a minimum, have to take away parking, so nobody can park on the street.
That's right. Yep. Absolutely true.
Yeah, that would, I'm not recommending it, but it's a reality. If there are two cars, one car has to wait and let the other car come through. I take that street 10 times a day.
Everybody should park down there. Make it harder for them to whiz through.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. John, followed by Carl.
Parking lot.
Hi, I'm John Kakunda. I live in Montera. I appreciate hearing all these comments from my neighbors and agree with a lot of what has been said. I especially agree with the comments about Mid-Penn. I've studied them a little bit and agree that they are probably not the altruistic company that they purport to be, and wanting to just only provide low-income housing. I think there are other profit-driven motives behind what they're doing as well. So I think we as a community, as we move forward, we should probably be a bit suspicious of, or a little dubious at least, of what they are coming to do here in a place where they don't live. And I appreciate MCC reflecting the community's overall feelings about this, and particularly in the comments to the letter. I have one comment about the letter and then a clarifying question, please. I agree with Audrey. I do like the comments. I do feel like they're a little bit passive. They're almost coming across as just, we want clarification on this or that. Really a lot of it focused on the bus routes, but I didn't hear enough about the overall impact of traffic, not just in the immediate area, but how it would impact traffic all the way to Half Moon Bay, given all the stoplights and the difficulties we have getting to town in mornings during the work week, and then on the weekends as well. So maybe a little more emphasis on that if possible. The one question I had, so there's two proposed phases of the permitting process. There's the LCP amendment, and then there's the building permit phase, I
No,
guess.
it's a planning permit, a coastal
Or-
development permit. The
Okay.
building permit doesn't have a public review.
Okay, so planning permit,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. So, my question is, well, I assume that phase two is contingent upon phase one passing. But my question is, just based on your experience or what you've read, if they manage to feed this to us in smaller chunks by getting phase one approved, is it more or less a foregone conclusion that phase two is gonna eventually go through? Thank you.
Is the question a two-phase build, or the two phases of the LCP and then the
If we get the
CDP?
LCP approved to reduce to 71 units, is the planning phase then gonna be a lot easier for them to get?
Then the planning phase becomes like any other CDP application. Anybody else wants to build a house or a large development or whatever it is, everything they go through. This project, the first phase is only different because an LCP amendment was required. We've never here dealt with this before, this separate phase. Normally, the project already complies with the LCP and they just move forward, and all that review is done. This is no different. It's not a done deal.
Dave, can I respond to his question?
I
In
think
30
Lisa
seconds.
covered it. Unless you think Lisa didn't cover it.
Well, I'm on community design review, which would be, we are involved with the CDP process. And I can't speak to this specific project, but I will say that in 6 years on that body, maybe 1 or 2 projects didn't ultimately get approved.
That's what I was afraid of.
Despite appeals and voting against approval, eventually, they did.
Projects change, but they almost always make it through the process if the developer has the staying power.
So, thank you for clarifying that, and that's my concern. I kind of feel like this big proposal is gonna be piecemealed into an LCP amendment and then a normal passage of a plan. And, it's gonna get by us even if we're opposed to it, even if the MCC comes out in opposition.
But that's unrelated to the LCP amendment. That would be the normal process. I'm not saying it would be going through as normal.
Right.
But I'm saying the process, as Lisa said, will be the normal process,
So I guess.
independent of the LCP.
Thank you, but so then I guess my question is, should we, as a community, oppose the LCP amendment? And what could that downwind effect occur?
Okay,
Are we
so-
gonna go back to 142 units and somebody else gonna buy it, and then we become more dense than what's being proposed now?
Okay, so 2 things. We talked about eventually practically everything gets approved. I'd just like to point out, and I know people may not be aware of this about Big Wave, there was 2 big waves. The first one was denied flat out at the Coastal Commission in 2012. And the project they came back the second time was majorly changed. And I know people still think it's too big, but let me tell you, it's a whole lot better than the first one. So, and that was because the Coastal Commission said, okay, we're denying this. If you want this to build, you gotta do this, this, and this, and this. So, yeah, eventually something will be built. Everybody wants to make money on their land, don't we all? So, then what was the second piece? Oh, as far as, let me just emphasize, when I say we are advisory, we are not decision makers. What that means is, if we reply to this to the project planner, who is not a decision maker either, and say, you should deny this project, they will totally ignore that. It means nothing to them. If we got to the planning commission, the decision maker, and we wrote and said, for example, we don't think you should adopt or approve this EIR because it's flawed this way and that way and the other thing, that's something else. We're not there yet.
Thank you.
Thank you. Carl, followed by Louis Lamb.
Well, the approval process, in seeing maybe 24 of this level of argument going on the coast side since the first LCP was passed, I can tell you that the approval process in this county is set up to railroad whatever the county prefers on any project. So what is an LCP, which is the thing we're talking about? An LCP is your local plan for the coastal zone where you live that makes your zone, your area, consistent with the Coastal Act, which is the act that governs the coastal zone for the entire length of California. Changes to the LCP are normally, when you bring this up, oh, I don't like something about the LCP, you're told, well, wait till the next time it's reviewed. They're supposed to be reviewed about every 10 years. Every LCP, city and county. They aren't, of course, but usually when somebody brings something up that's inappropriate, you're told there will be a chance to change it. I can tell you from going through 2 of these revisions, you don't change anything. The only changes that are made are to weaken the LCP in favor of developers and other financial interests. We've never seen a strengthening of the LCP. The last time it was revised, we had meeting after meeting on the coast side. A couple of dozen developers were given as great a voice as the entire rest of the coast side population. So it's not a democratic process by any means. It's a process that the county does control. Changing the LCP means that the change must be consistent with the Coastal Act. And the Coastal Act gets into all sorts of things that we're told, oh, they're not on the agenda now, they're not appropriate now, and so forth. Yes, they are. Read Chapter 1 of the Coastal Act, which very few people do, and I doubt many coastal commissioners have read it in the current atmosphere. It sets up, this project has nothing coastal in character about it, but it's supposed to go on and on. This area has been an affordable housing site since the first LCP at the end of the 70s. And at that time, San Mateo County is under pressure from ABAG, other regional government, to establish affordable housing areas. They have actually ABAG, which is an unelected regional government to which our county belongs, sets up these quotas and so forth. ABAG is simply a development process, a pro-development push as a regional government. To take on an LCP change at this time without the specifics, with, oh yeah, this is probably what'll happen on the highway. This is probably who will own it. We don't know where the money's coming from on this. This is, the height requirements on the building, so forth and so on. None of that's spelled out at this time for this LCP change, yet they all are matters covered by the Coastal Act. The specifics are necessary.
Carl, you're 30 seconds over. Could you wrap it up?
Okay. The specifics are necessary for any LCP change and must be considered. And the cumulative effects of this project on our coast and everything covered by the Coastal Act on the coast, which is why we have most of the problems we have now, the cumulative effects of this, along with all the other future proposed projects, must be taken into consideration, and that must be communicated before any change to the LCP. Thank you.
Thank you. Lewis, followed by Bonnie Ring.
Hello, hi, my name is Lewis. I just want to comment on the.
Where are you from?
Initially, I'm from Iowa. Where I'm from, okay, I see. I live in Moss Beach. We moved to Moss Beach about a year and a half ago. So I want to comment on the traffic impact for the development. So I live on Stetson, and I can see the intersection of Stetson and California from my balcony. And every day I see people walking dogs, walking their kids in strollers, including us. We're lucky that I work from home, so I get to take my son to Moss Beach Park pretty much every day. And without fail, almost every day I see cars running stop signs on California. In fact, for the past, since we moved in there, I think I've seen 3 T-bone accidents on Ecuador in California already. My main concern is with the additional cars, there's gonna be even more accidents, and for us, and the increase of cars on Ecuador means we won't even be able to walk my son to the park, because there's no sidewalk on Ecuador. So that's my main worry, is it's gonna become unsafe for us to even take our son to play in the park, and then I have to drive 1/10 of a mile to take him to the park, which is ridiculous. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Bonnie Ring, followed by Buffy Bunting.
I know it's late and everybody's tired. What has hit me the most strongly, having read all this material today and watched Lisa's presentation and listened to each of your intelligent comments, is that if we don't address the irrationality of changing the LCD, everything will continue to proceed. By bringing up traffic, by bringing up all the other issues, they can be at the bottom. But the top issue is the false assumption of 2 things. One, that this is an appropriate area for affordable housing, dense affordable housing. And secondly, that it's an appropriate area for 78 units, 148 units, you know, it doesn't matter. Nobody has ever assessed the rationality of putting multiple units on that small piece of land surrounded by forest. It's not logical. And if you don't really address it directly, this will go through, and then it'll be just a slow march, one step after another, and they will pick it carefully, because it's a ruse. It's a ruse to get us to support something that we don't, in fact, support. I am thrilled to hear how much opposition there is in this room, and how intelligent a group of people you are. We didn't have that kind of input every time we interacted with Mid-Penn. They have not paid attention to this community, and you're right, it's not a democracy. The Board of Supervisors can do whatever they damn please, and the only way we can have an effect on them is to vote them out.
Thank you. Buffy Bunting, followed by Emily Burke.
I'll make it short. Thank you all for your service. You have been working long and hard on all of this for a long time, but so have you. So has everyone in this room in many different ways. So a couple things. You mentioned that I've always found it ironic that we vote for you, but you don't have a vote. You don't have a vote when it comes to things like this. I can't wrap my head around that. I worked for the city and county of San Francisco for 35 years. I don't understand that. So I've learned to live with it. But your strength may not be in your vote, but your strength is on what you can do on our behalf. And so there's been many, many, many comments, intelligent comments and thoughtful considerations about all of this. But a lot of it has felt from the report, and I appreciate your report, Lisa. I really do appreciate that. A lot of it feels like a fait accompli. As people have said, 71 units, okay, here's a traffic officer. Why are we justifying any of that when we don't really have to and shouldn't? And you, as our advocates, should always have that in mind, and I'm not saying you don't. I'm just saying that should be first and foremost on your mind. So a lot of things we've talked about today. One in particular strikes me, because like I said, I work in San Francisco, is the EIR. We have only to look to San Francisco, Hunters Point, to find out what can happen if you don't really advocate in a very proactive, strong manner and really call them out on everything that could happen to us. So those are the concerns I have. I live in Moss Beach. I've lived here since 1986. I built my husband and I built our house. We're happy there. It's sweet. The roads are narrow. None of this makes sense, but that EIR is essential and must be done. So my final words are, we support everything that you're doing. And the expectation, at least from my point of view, because I vote for you, for the people here, but my expectation, whether you have a vote or not, is to continue that role as advocates on our behalf and speak loud and speak clear, and be grateful for having a community that trusts you with our future. Thank you.
Emily Burke.
My name's Emily Burke. I live in Moss Beach, right near the hospital.
Me too.
So I think it's great that you're trying to express the community's fairly unanimous opinion. And the letter is, you're trying to address something point by point, because that's what a rational person does. But I feel like what people did who made this proposal is they came up with a checklist of why this is an ideal site to locate their low-income housing, very dense residents. And then they went down that checklist. They said, yes, they need medical facilities, so we're gonna call Seton Coastside a medical facility. It's not a medical center. It's not where you can take a patient to see a doctor. I think at some point, you can't even get a test there. I think you can get a test there for 2 hours every Tuesday, unless they run out of coffee or something. But I've seen people just lined up for medical tests, and you can't get them. So I think the letter needs to point out it needs to address this checklist and explain why these things do not satisfy a check being put in that checklist. So I think we need to say there's not medical facilities. Like, anybody gets hurt, they get helicoptered out, or they go out by ambulance. There's probably a checklist item that says mass transportation, okay? There is one bus per hour, which does not actually arrive at the hour it's supposed to arrive at. I just see people sitting there at Sunshine Valley, and they're like, do you think there's gonna be a bus here sometime? Today? Anyway, that is not mass transportation. That is what the checklist item says, mass transportation. That is not, we do not have mass transportation. Parking. So I went to one of the, what were they called?
Open house.
Whatever they are. I think they called it something else, but, okay. So they were saying, okay, so we're allocating space on the site for 2.7 cars. And that means there's gonna be 2 cars per unit, right? So I said to them, okay, so, when you take a science class, one of the first things you do is the rounding, right? So if it's above 0.5, you round up. You don't round down. So that means 2.7 cars means there's 3 cars per unit, but they're only allocating an average of 2.7 cars in terms of spaces. Now, what does that mean? That means if those cars are not going to be parked in that space, they're going to be parked outside of the space. And to see what that looks like, you might want to drive down Airport Boulevard in an evening, where all the people who are living in the trailer park there, park their cars along the road. And it's just solid cars everywhere. So imagine what that looks like for the people who are already having trouble finding parking in Moss Beach.
Emily, you're 30 seconds over. Could you
Okay.
wrap up, please?
So traffic, same thing. I agree with all of the people who said they don't know there are no school buses, but that needs to be in the letter, because all of those 3 cars per unit are going to be taking their kids to school. And a 7-Eleven is not a grocery store. And what I think you guys might want to do is say that, look, we're going to meet with you. We want to meet with you at 6 p.m. in this building, and make them drive 92 during rush hour on a school day. Twice, or 3 times, or 4
Okay,
times.
so Emily, you're way over.
I'm done.
I have one more speaker slip for Teresa McLaughlin.
Sorry, it's quick. You asked for specifics about the letter, and I was just confused at the part where it was talking about the width of the roads. And you explained that that's really the right of way. And I think it's an important distinction to make because if right now the paved portion of the road is more narrow, and if we are gonna have all these people, more people traveling on the roads, it would cost a lot of money to increase the paved portion of the roads. And we've got limited resources, we've got limited sewer, limited water. This isn't the best place to build housing for people. It's across from the sewer plant, it's across from the cliffs. There's other places on the coast side where they have access to the new library, to better trails they're more accessible. You know, if you're fit, if you're healthy, there's lots of hiking opportunities up there. But if you're disabled or not as fit, it's more limited. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so I have no more speaker slips. Is there anybody who has not spoken, and wants to speak? Raise your hand so I know how many there are. Go ahead.
I'll try to. My name's Tony Magnuson. I live in Moss Beach.
Can you say it in front of the microphone, please?
My name's Tony Magnuson. I live in Moss Beach. I've been a master planner and engineer. When I looked at that, I just want to say something about the traffic study. The traffic study is in 3 phases, right? You've got it looks at the existing condition for the way it is now, or the way it was in April, and then it looks at 5 years out, basically, and then it looks at a 20-year term. And the 5-year out one includes like the big wave stuff. So what's going on, what you commented on in the letter was the long-term effect when they close all those roads. Initially, I think what the traffic study was saying when I read it, my interpretation was that the existing plus the mid-pen condition they interpreted that as leaving the level of service at Carlos Street as C. Although, even though in the afternoons, afternoon commute, and on Saturday, it's actually level service D. Again, this is in the weed stuff. But the San Mateo County guidance on traffic studies says that no turning action should be less than level of service C for a new project like this. But the county can, in special cases, at their discretion, allow a level of service D. So it's at the county's discretion. Also, I took a look at how they figured out the traffic, the trip generation. They used an older trip generation, the last model, I'm sorry. Anyway, the trip generation with the new model and considering it multifamily housing comes out a little higher for those conditions that are level of service D. Also, they use the highway capacity manual for figuring out the delay times. That's been superseded as well. But I haven't seen whether that makes a difference. But the single point I wanted to make, and I'm sorry about this, is that 71 units renders this condition level of service D. Then if one comment might be that we in Moss Beach on this skinny road and around with the curve and everything, we don't accept level of service D. We don't think the county should either. Then they should go back to the drawing boards, and if 71 units is too much, what would allow a level of service C, which is what the county guidance says it should be for a new project, and that's what they should at least start with.
Okay.
That was.
Thank you. I think we had Marcia. Did you want to speak? Then you can be after Marcia.
Hi, I'm Marcia Yates, and I live in Moss Beach, and I just wanted to say that, you know, we have to really consider how much water and natural resources that this particular project is going to be taking. And also, haven't mentioned too much about the fire hazard behind where the complex is, where the development is going to be. And I appreciate all the work that the MCC has been doing, but it's also our responsibility as community members to write our supervisors, to write the people who are going to be making the decisions, and let them know that it's not okay with us. So it's great, they'll see this MCC meeting and you'll talk to your neighbors, but they need cards and letters to let them know that we're not okay with it and why we're not. So thank you everybody for participating, and remember, donate to Resist Density, because we're working really hard to get this thing blocked.
Hi, I'm Ted Kay, and I've lived in Moss Beach for about 40 years. And I just wanted to kind of sum up. I think you heard what the people in this community want, and basically what they want is for this project to be stopped. And so whatever way, whatever techniques that you have to stop this project, that's what we would like you to do. Now, we understand you're not decision makers. This is an advisory board, but all of you have had some experience in trying to deal with projects like this. And so whatever way you think is best to try and stop it, whatever kind of monkey wrenches you can throw into this thing to stop it, we are asking you to please do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody who hasn't spoken who wants to comment? Okay, it's 9 o'clock. If you have spoken and you want to say something really brief that you were reminded of during all those discussions, I will entertain a small number of second people. The people who want to comment a second time, please raise their hands so I know how many there are. 2, 3, 4.
May I just make a point?
Yeah.
If you want us to get comments approved tonight, we need time to do that. Just keep that in mind. We may have to continue this meeting.
We may need another hour for the council itself. Okay, so I'll start with Ann. Keep it to a minute. And I'm going to be brutal.
Well, that's okay. I have more of a question. Actually.
Go to the.
Sorry. I had a question. Is it possible to address any of the environmental concerns now, or is that really for later on? And my question is because of the failures with the sewer system and the fact that, you know, for the residents now we are paying considerably more to have this service updated. So is there anything?
Okay, we can comment anytime we want. The MCC can. This is the first shot. So I showed you the list of agencies that got referrals. Fire, water, everybody got referrals. We need to see those, you know, and when we see Connect the Coast Side, we may have other things, ammunition, talk about whatever. I mean, things to point out that need to be addressed that we don't know yet. I think this preliminary thing, I don't know the sense of the council, but there is an opportunity to get something approved tonight if we don't have extensive editing. Otherwise, we're not going to get anything done tonight.
Exactly. I think one other thing is roundabouts, which I think are a great idea, by the way. They have one temporarily in place up in Hillsburg, so if there's any questions about how to set that up, maybe you can contact the city. Thank you.
Forgetting it. It's one of the disadvantages of intensity and age. I live in Moss Beach, and yeah, let somebody take it over and I'll.
Sid?
This is a really quick point. I don't know how many of you know, but Lennar Homes is building at the Hunters Point Shipyard. And it just recently came out. I'm a realtor in the city. We have now a disclosure for all the toxic cleanup that got faked and questionable reports. And there's radioactive soil underneath the homes they've already built. So I forget who it was that was sitting here, but I think they have a good point about taking a look at the existing military base leftovers that's there. Thank you.
Can I come back?
Yeah.
The point I wanted to make was there's a lot of talent in this room, and I'm not speaking about myself, I'm speaking about the planners, the engineers, the environmental impact people, and the soil specialists. You ought to have an advisory committee with those people as your allies, advising you on things that you need to say, and don't just leave it to your own intelligence.
Thank you.
Yes.
Was there anybody else who wanted to go again? Okay, I'm going to close public comment, and before,
I just had will there be more room for questions at all?
not after we close public comment. I mean, historically, we may allow a few, but we're running really late, and I expect the council discussion to run long. So if you have something to say it now.
This might be a silly question, but I worked all day and I'm really tired, but I had to be here. Basically, if this situation here is approved, that does not guarantee that there will be apartments. It's just the draft, correct?
This is for the LCP amendment to lower the density.
Yes,
And
okay.
nothing else.
Okay.
That
And-
said, the documents that were drawn up, and the reason that we are commenting on to the detail we are likely to be the equivalent or part of the CEQA or EIR. So we
Okay.
want to get any issues raised now.
Okay, and I'm not sure if you'd be able to answer this, but what can I do as a citizen to make sure that the apartments don't come up? Would I have to write to Don Horsley, or would I have to? Oh, I love him.
At this stage, you can write anybody you want, but the most productive thing to do is when the next phase starts, and we will certainly announce it on the Midcoast Community Council website, that you then direct your comments to the planner and the planning commission at that point. At this point, if it's commented on something other than the LCP, they're just gonna set it aside and it's gonna become stale. But you can write to any of the politicians or bodies that you want.
Okay, cool. Thank you so much for that. Thank you.
Supporting resist density?
All right. I'm of two minds what to do at this point. Can I poll the council on whether we want to in any way try and address any of the comments we heard, or do we want to just go through the council comments? Just looking for a straw poll consensus on how we want to handle it.
What were the two choices again, Dave?
Respond to some of the specific things that were relevant to the letter and the LCP amendment from the audience, or just go to general council discussion.
It doesn't matter. Personally, I feel that we need to go to general council discussion because I feel like we've heard a lot of those comments, we've chewed over them, we know, and now we need to address our letter.
Anybody disagree with that? Okay. I'm opening council discussion on that. I'm sorry, did you disagree?
I'm not sure. I won't disagree right now.
Okay. So we'll open it for council discussion. I'm sure we'll address some of the community comments during that. Chris, since you started last time, I'm gonna start with somebody else. I'm gonna actually start on my right. Lisa?
I've been talking a whole lot, you don't need to start with me.
I wanted to give you the chance. Barbara?
Oh, God. Okay, well, first of all, I would invite anybody to get a refresher course and go back and look at the February of 2016 MCC meeting where MidPen came here. And 148 units was never in their plan. The Vice President of Real Estate Development, I think her name was Jan, said that right from the get-go. They were never gonna build that many. So to act like they're now doing us a favor by cutting it in half, I don't get that. She made all kinds of promises to this room, to this group, that they were gonna listen to us, they were going to basically bend over backwards to work with us to make this development happen. We went to these open houses that they gave, that joke at El Granada School, and they don't listen to us. They're not listening to us. So, I don't know, I just have a really hard time. I kind of tend to agree to not change the LCP at this point. And that's where I'm standing.
Okay. Brandon?
Look, everyone in this room knows that changing the LCP is a bait and switch thing. And so they're just trying to play nice with us just so they can get their 71 units in, and I'm not buying that. And then I actually have concerns regarding eligibility to live there, other than making it actually affordable income. I wonder if they will actually check for criminal background, if they're legal residents, and if they are drug-free as well. And also the thing is that, I mean, based on the pictures, up to 4 units per building, that's a bit too much. And having just one bedroom units, that just sounds like too urban to me. Many people here talked about ruralness and living rural, but when you just move here and turn it urban, it's not rural anymore. And regarding you know, jobs and all that stuff, when you talk about jobs in the coast side, I think that there's no shame in living in Pacifica or Half Moon Bay and going to going to your work. I mean, like, think about it. I mean, even if you if you live in that unit, you're probably going to have to drive to get at work. Even if you work in a restaurant El Granada, you still have to drive. It won't make much difference if you live in Pacifica or Lindamar, wherever, close by, and drive there. It's not going to make much of a difference. So, and I mean, regarding living in a place where you want to live, I wouldn't live in. I know I love Moss Beach. I love this place, but I also do want to live in Atherton or Los Gatos, but I can't afford it, And so I'm not demanding them that they make a bunch of dense housing like a beehives. We don't want a beehive here. They don't want a beehive there, So, like, it's the analogy I'm trying to get is that, I mean, I would certainly like to live in a nicer place, but obviously they're not. People there don't want to have bigger density there, Like, I mean, I think there's absolutely no shame in living in Lindamar or Pacifica and working your way into living into the coast side in a proper single-family home. Thank you.
Claire?
This meeting so far tonight makes me really proud to live here. There's a lot of really thoughtful comments that were made tonight and a lot of really talented people, and I think that I hope that we got everybody's name and everything for the records, because there's probably people that I would like to tap into some of the things that they have expertise in. I think the letter is good. A lot of work went into it. There's a lot of I think really strong points in it. There were things brought up tonight that aren't in the letter that I think maybe we might want to consider if this is continued adding. The fact of it being an abandoned military site does seem like something that was glossed over, and it does seem like they were saying the absence of evidence is not the evidence of absence, is probably a thing that should be looked at, because it might actually affect everything else. So that's where I am right now.
Chris?
All right. I just want to start by reiterating something that Lisa said, which is we're an advisory council. We're not decision making. So we're really caught in the political game here, which is if we, as Lisa said, if we just say, you know what, we're not doing this, we say no, one sentence letter, okay, that might feel good. But what's going to happen is the county is going to go, okay, they're out. And then we will have no say on nothing going forward. So we're stuck in this trap where we need to have exert whatever influence we can, but still be a player in the game so we can still have our voice, your voice in the game. Otherwise, you gotta go right to Board of Supervisors in Redwood City for their meetings at 9 o'clock on Tuesday morning. So that is what that's the conundrum that we are stuck with every single time we have a project like this. This project is ripping my stomach apart because it reminds me of the Big Wave project of, it just seems like there's so many things wrong, so many obvious logical things, and yet at every step, the MCC has to navigate the governmental bureaucratic ladder of to how these comments are made and where we fit into it, which is right at the very bottom rung. Okay, so, and I've heard terms like fait accompli and railroad, and I share those sentiments. I mean, like I said, I've been on design review for 6 years. There's maybe 1 or 2 projects the whole time that didn't get approved at the end of the day. They've been modified, as Big Wave was, as Dave said, these projects get modified, but once they show up at design review, they're happening. So I feel that desperation right now. Like if we move to the next stage, this is happening. But what can we do here in this body? We can't send that 1-sentence letter that says, we're getting it, because then we're out. And we want to have our say in it. So what I was thinking is, I also wanted to say, in 5 years on this council, this is one of the most strongly worded letters I've ever read this council author. So I know that there's people going, hey, if this is one of the strongly worded letters, well, that's the situation we're in. It is a strongly worded letter. There are sentences in there when I read this, because as Lisa said, only 3 council members maximum could work on this. So I was not able to talk to these other council members, and when I read this, I went, okay. I mean, there's things in there. The MCC and the community are adamantly opposed. I mean, that's a rare comment from the MCC, because we have to be kind of this partner. So I support the letter in the comments that it makes. The comments that it makes are right. There are many other comments that could be made, excellent comments, JQ. The environmental situation here, I have written in my notes, who or what will be the liability if the project is built in decades in the future, lawsuits are brought due to health issues of the residents. 2 words, love canal, okay? But we're not gonna know for 20 years. So why are we having an EIR equivalent instead of a full EIR? This is the process. We can't change that process now. So I support the letter as written. I'm not sure that it's worth adding in any more specifics, although there's one thing that I would like to propose or have the council chew on as we go to Dan's comments next. And that is, even though I read that statement about the MCC and the community are adamantly opposed, I still feel like what is missing from this letter, if I could say that there's anything missing, and I will want to tip my hat to the 3 authors. And it's an amazing letter. I'm sorry to keep getting off. This is amazing. You know what? The amount of time that goes in to research the LCP, to research these things, to present a cogent presentation that you can actually make sense of, from the amount of pages of documents that there were to look at, and the obfuscation, and the, whatever other adjectives you want to put on, disingenuousness or whatever of the various parties. I mean, it's an amazing piece of work. So the only thing to me that is missing, given what I'm hearing from the community, what I know to be true, would be a statement, a general bucket statement that says, and every single community member that we heard of was vehemently opposed to this project on many grounds. Please see the public record for a litany of those objections. To me, that is a statement that we could put in there to convey to the powers that be, the community feels heck no. And we're not the MCC, because we need to address certain articles in the LCP and the way the process goes. I think that's our best chance of conveying that message. And really, and I'm sorry if this sounds bad, really all that we can do at this particular stage right now is send up that message. The community says heck no. So that's what I would say to the council. Thank you.
Sorry, can I just get a clarifying question? By saying that the community says no, but we support the LCP change, I mean,
What I meant to say, sorry, thank you, John. My, I guess, proposed addition to the document would be some kind of sentence that says every single person that spoke about this project vehemently opposed the project and the LCP update.
There were only a few people who expressed that opinion. I don't know how the others feel, but there were only a few who expressed that opinion.
Okay,
We can consider it. Are you done, Chris?
Yes, thank you very much.
Dan?
First of all, I want to thank everybody for coming out. It's, we all have busy lives, and your time here tonight is just very important. So, obviously, many important concerns came up tonight that point to the necessity for the EIR. So I think that should be included in the letter. I'm very concerned with the impact on the traffic where we live right now. We really need to be thinking about the rapid increase of local congestion. The congestion right outside of our front door, on the street that we live on. Accidents, when we're not out there walking our dogs on the road, cars are flying, running through stop signs. I see it. The apps, when this road is full, they tell you right away, okay, take Sunshine Valley Road. But there's a bus going slowly on it, inappropriately because of the turning. It's just certainly not. I see it in El Granada. 101 Highway 1 backs up. People just turn right off the road and then they back up and they wait. 20 minutes I've been in it. I'm sorry, maybe not. It's 10, 15 minutes. You're waiting just to get on the highway. So this is going to happen everywhere as the traffic gets worse. Yeah, these roads were never designed to hold the traffic that they're holding today. They're just not. So many times on many of the roads that I use in my area and in Ontario, whenever I go, you literally have to pull over, and somebody's got to decide who's going to pass who's going to pull over to the side so that traffic can move on that street because of cars parking. Essentially, that's the reason. Cars are parking. Then take away the parking to widen the road. Now what? So there's a lot of important concerns that lead us to really point to the need for the EIR. And final, I think that the Planning Commission should be more responsible for the impacts of their results of their planning. I personally agree that this project is simply bad planning. And I am supporting resist density, and I'm not sure about the letter. I thank you, Lisa. I think that, there's been many comments. I agree. It can be described as passive. I think that there needs to be something, there needs to be a bite in it.
Needs what?
A bite. I think we need to be asking for the EIR. Okay, so I'll speak generally. I'm going to address some of these things. There's no EIR required for the LCP amendment. There's not any point in us asking for it because it's not going to be required. The amount of data that was required is actually surprisingly large, and the best statement we have is from Steve Monowitz, the planning director, saying that it was the Coastal Commission who asked for that data. So normally you would not have that volume of data for a project like this on something like this LCP amendment. So the Coastal Commission staff did ask for a lot of data. So I would strongly urge us not to request putting an EIR in there. I do want to comment on the hazardous materials. I do think it would be appropriate for us to add a note in the letter saying that it appears that asbestos wasn't looked for in the subsurface sampling and should be looked at for all the various reasons stated. Somehow I missed that when I went through it. And I will say that they did 32 bore sites across the site at varying depths. So it was a reasonably thorough sampling. You can quibble with whether they analyzed all the right data. If there's anybody in the audience, or you know somebody who knows about hazardous sampling, I've heard several people say they did, by all means look at that and tell us what's wrong with it. We can always send another comment. But we're not hazardous materials people. It looked to me pretty thorough. I'm trying to think of, so fire danger, several people raised fire danger. We are totally relying on CPFD to do that. They are the experts. If you know an expert that's better than them, by all means point them at us. We don't have that expertise. I look at it, I look at the trees that exist there and the trees that are going to be cleared, and the brush that's going to be cleared. It looks to me like it's pretty well defensive, but I'm not an expert. I'm trying to think of any other comments I heard. Oh, so one really important thing on the transportation analysis that many people may have missed, and we did catch this in the letter, there's two really important things. One is that they're looking at cumulative impact of all these projects plus cumulative impact with theirs. Those are the two most important items to look at. And their analysis says, and again, I'm not a traffic expert, I've looked at a lot of traffic analysis, so I'm not a complete neophyte either, that their traffic on an hourly basis on all these peak periods does not move any of these intersections from one LOS level to another. The cumulative impact of all the developments does. And then, the other thing we covered in the letter is, for some reason, Half Moon Bay and Pacifica provided very complete data on projects in process. County planning missed almost all of them. And those are the ones that are most relevant to this project. So we called that out in the letter. So no surprise, since I worked on the letter, I'm pretty happy with it. The only suggestion I have is a phrase somewhere in there about the asbestos analysis. All right, second round.
Oh, I didn't go.
You can be first your round.
I want to read this sentence. It's from the letter, but it wasn't in the presentation. Many years of Midcoast growth without much needed and long identified bike pedestrian safety and mobility improvements have caught up with us now, with too many people dependent on their cars and stuck in traffic without safe and convenient alternative transportation. We get it, and this is the bigger picture. This is what you need to come and talk when Connect the Coast Side arrives. It's like a lot of the comments here are talking about an overall situation here that's been accumulating, and stopping this one project will not fix that overarching situation. So, I mean, what's the end game here? And even for this parcel, stopping this project isn't the end game for that parcel, because it's still in private ownership, and then it will still have the dense zoning. So it's, for the MCC, who has consistently advocated for the need to significantly reduce Midcoast residential build-out, this is going in the right direction for that parcel. Would that we could get this kind of density build-out number reduction throughout the Midcoast. Are any of you gonna volunteer to downzone your parcels? So it is a big issue, and it all, you know, I understand this particular project focuses all these issues, but they've delayed Connect the Coast Side. It's supposedly coming to us now, so keep the momentum, and because these are really, as Carl was saying, this is a much bigger problem. And I just wanted to say a couple of things. These comments I consider initial comments as I wrote this. Clearly, I did not have all the information I needed, and clearly there will be other opportunities, even before, because we were offered to we didn't need to get this done now, we could have waited till the end of September. So there's more time for more letters, and as we get, these other comments from the other agencies, there's plenty of time for that, or even just with comments here tonight, if someone else wants to draft a follow-up letter. And to the comment about, in the vein of, there are no jobs, the people don't need to live here, or what we're gonna have is like the trailer park on Airport Street, people parking all along the road. Well, okay, I live at Pillar Ridge, the trailer park on Airport Street, and those vehicles out there are not ours, maybe less than half anyway, and there are 3 automobile businesses in those warehouses, but nevertheless, we get the flack. My neighbors are having to move out. The price of so we don't have income restrictions here. We have fought long and hard for rent control on the land under our homes. We own our homes. And so in this market, the price of those homes is rising exponentially. And I mean, and so daily, people come into the resident manager looking for housing. They work here, they had rental housing, they're losing it for one reason or another, they're desperate for housing. We've got nothing. Basically, she says, go to the realtors, all the local realtors have a wait list, they have pre-approved people that when somebody comes in and has something you want to put it, it's snapped up right away. You never see any sign of it. And these prices now, because people over the hill, if you work in Palo Alto, compared to finding housing there, to come over here, if you can get a manufactured home in Pillar Ridge, that's what they're looking for. And the prices now of the homes themselves are out of the range of people with local jobs. And I feel like my neighbors, the people who serve the more well-to-do members of this community are invisible to you, and it hurts me, and I just had to say that.
I get to follow up on that too. Well, Lisa, you make a good point about the need for this housing. And I wish I could say I feel good about knowing that those people are gonna get the housing. But I just saw emails today that there's nowhere that they're saying they're gonna let that happen.
Right.
And right from the first meeting we've had all along, that's one of the things we've always asked, is at least, if nothing else, let us have these people that are residents down here already. They won't even go along with that. So, and as far as the referral goes, looking at that, this is the only body that can speak for all of us. We're the only ones. The rest of them are all government agencies. So I think it's important that we let the county, let everybody know how Moss Beach and Montara feels about this, that it's just not a good spot. We need the housing, but that's not the spot for it.
Look, affordable housing is good, but as I like to agree with the others, it's not in a good spot, and that there's no guarantee actual people who need it will be able to afford it. And the thing is that once the once the apartment buildings are all filled up, there's probably going to be another waiting list going on. So, I mean, this is probably just going to be a drop in the water. There's always going to be a need for housing. No matter how much you build, there's always going to be more and more demand. And we have to realize that there is only so much supply, and regardless of whether we rezone more to get dense, there's always going to be people who are not able to live here, and there's always going to be waiting lists. And then, and also regarding transit and all that, buses and crossings, it's true we don't have all these buses and crossings, but the thing is, all right, actually, how many of you frequently are behind slow trucks? Raise your hand. A lot of you. All right. How many of you want to be behind slow buses? Raise your hand. None of you. So the thing is, if we do do something like mass transit, that's going to, and lots of crossings, we're never going to get anywhere. So just ameliorating this plan just to increase all these stuff. It's going to increase traffic. Just having more of these obstacles in a way. So, and I think that having a limited second units might help alleviate housing, but this monstrosity of just multiple apartment buildings in a place where there's many single-family homes is just not right. It is out of character of the coast side, and the MCC, the Midcoast Community Council, is to advocate for our residents and to keep the rural nature of our community intact. That is one of the missions of the MCC.
Claire?
There were a few issues that are sort of being alluded to now that we tried to deal with in the letter, and they're very complex, and they're not going to be addressed in total right now. But just to cite some of them, I think it's important that we not lose track of the limits on building permits and how this project would affect them. I think that also brings up the issue of ADUs. Apparently, ADUs do count against the 40 building permits per year allowed on the Midcoast. So it's going to be a tough choice down the road as to whether we ask the county to aggressively enforce permitting on second units, or whether, in order to keep the build out down, or whether people are going to be inconvenienced by that. That's going to be a decision that's going to come down the road that we're going to have to look at the ramifications of. Also, the issue of local preferences and the issue of what the income levels in these housing units are going to be are not well addressed. They're not answered at all, and those are actually also key things that we have to look at as this progresses. Right now, we've addressed them as well as we can, but they're unanswered.
Good point.
Chris?
I just feel like the voice of doom, but I don't want this project to be there, but we're stuck, and it's not the right place. I would agree, but that decision was made in 1986. It is one of the three spots identified for affordable housing. One of the others being where Big Wave is going, and that went through, despite being quashed in 2012, despite some shenanigans in the last couple of years. It's gone through. Unless the LCP gets changed, this is an affordable housing site that's been in the LCP since 1986. I don't know what can be done to move it to a different site, or to say that this isn't the appropriate site. It has been deemed the appropriate site for 30 plus years. So, that I'm not saying give up and just walk away. I'm saying there has to be a different approach, and it's not the right site. And again, I'm feeling like the contamination angle is your angle, especially with what Sid said about Hunters Point and other places where the hundreds of millions of dollars that somebody's going to be on the hook for in 10 or 20 years, when unfortunately people start coming down with some kind of lymphatic cancer or something, which by that time that we're all out of here, you're maybe moved on or wherever, it's going to be hard. It's going to be hard to hold people accountable down the line. And so maybe that is the threat, the
Smoking gun.
I don't know about smoke. I don't know if that's the right metaphor, but the stick that groups like Resist Density wave around, that this isn't the right spot, not because it's not deemed appropriate and labeled as such in the LCP, but because you're looking at more liability than you can handle, whoever the entity is. I'm sorry to say that, because again, I feel very strongly about this project as well, but I'm sorry, but to say it's not in the right spot, that ship has sailed. And so we have to think of other things. Back,
Do you ever think that they volunteered the site because it's a problem?
I can't get into, that was before my time, but I would love to, JQ, you're get John Grisham in here, let's write a super cool novel about this thing, because I think there are some things in there. Who knows? Carl could probably tell you what went down in the 80s, and I'm sure it wasn't good.
Before you get all conspiracy theory,
Right.
remember there was a school there for many years too.
Yes, which they burned down, and then that was in the discussion of like, and then that asbestos got burned down. But getting back to our letter and what we need to do tonight. Again, one of the most strongly worded letters I've seen the MCC put out in 5 years. It has a lot of things in there. Things that we talked about was the asbestos contamination, the cumulative traffic effect, and the vehement opposition of the community would be 3 amendments or additions that I would propose. Any combination of those 3, the one that I feel strongly about, most strongly about, is having the voice of the community heard in that letter by a sentence about vehement opposition to this project on many fronts, including environmental contamination.
Okay. Dan?
Yes, I agree with Chris about the, vehement opposition, the contamination. Somehow it should be captured. I really believe that the EIR request should, will give us the best opportunity to really hold them accountable, and we'll be able to look at the EIR and, go from there. It's a good starting point that we should be there now.
Okay. Lisa, you want to say anything? So you're caught up with
Steve's
everybody
already
else?
answered that question. He said what the secret process is gonna be. He's the community development director. So to reiterate that request will just be totally ignored and decrease our credibility.
I disagree that
If you want
decrease
to-
our
I would
credibility. It's really the
suggest that
community's request.
anybody who wants the EIR started immediately, contact your supervisors, because they're the only ones who can order it.
Can I make a
It's
comment?
not in the normal
Sorry.
process.
Can I make a comment and I have a question?
It's really brief.
It'll be brief. I concur with some of the sentiment expressed tonight, that it feels like it's a fait accompli, it's been almost railroaded. I think most people I talk to, I've heard in this community are vehemently against this project. It's not a democratic process at all. It affects people in this community. And I hear this, the train is at the station, hey, we're living here, we're in a democracy. This is not the right thing for this community or the people in that project.
Okay,
So here's what
summarize.
I'd like to, here's my question. Do we have an opportunity to promulgate a lawsuit? Because we live in a
Talk to
country
resistance.
where we-
In our society,
we can sue
anybody can bring a suit on any basis you want.
That's
and
what I'd recommend.
As long as you're, no,
The train is not on the
anybody who
station.
wants to pay for a lawsuit in one form or another can go ahead and bring it. The council's not gonna be recommended. So, a couple more things I wanna say, just in case this is not clear to people, I'm for this project. I am totally,
Do you live in Moss Beach?
I used to live in Montera, I hike in that
But
area.
you live in Moss Beach?
No, but
Okay, where do you live?
I live in El Vernon, right next to
Okay,
another,
Oh,
right
none
next
of
to
the back
another
and
one.
forth, please.
Yeah,
I'm sorry. Point
Sorry,
of order.
thank you, Lisa, thank you. So, opposition is not unanimous. When I went to the workshops, I was not the only person who was in favor of the project. So, I'm fine with adding a sentence to the letter to the fact, or a paragraph to the letter, saying something, and I'm asking for feedback on this right now from the council.
About what?
Let me get it out. That at the meeting, where we discussed this letter, all of the people who spoke from the community were strongly against the project. I think that's a true statement of fact. I think it conveys what Chris and Dan want to convey. I don't think it's as strong as they want to convey, but I think it's very factual.
Could we use the adverb vehemently instead of strongly? Or are
If
you,
If
okay.
you want to say that, I just want to make it at the meeting.
Okay.
How do people feel about that?
I'm not crazy about the idea, or about the word vehemently, because one of the things that I saw happen here tonight was not the contentiousness that we've had in previous meetings where people were highly emotional and saying things that really were personal, which is fine. It's good to be emotional and personal. But this was very well reasoned. Well, anybody could listen to what anybody had to say without getting upset. You made very clear points and well reasoned, well argued. And I'd like to convey that this is not just mass hysteria. This is well thought out concerns about the project that are universally shared at this meeting.
That was sort of my thinking too.
Can we just
Yeah.
word it to say something like, based on the following factors, 1, 2, 3, potential asbestos, et cetera, all people present who spoke about this project were against, like, we're being,
I don't want to do bullet points. I'm fine with a lead-in sentence or paragraph. And in fact, I'd like to leave it to Lisa to word it. I think the sense of the council is clear as long as so we don't want vehement, we want reasoned but very strong opposition from the audience conveyed. Are you happy with that idea, Lisa?
Happy?
Well, or I can go write it and give it to you. I just don't want to try and write it right now.
I was looking for the addition we made to the RV park letter.
Could I make one quick comment?
Yeah, while Lisa's doing it.
Yeah, well,
go
Lisa,
ahead.
I think I said earlier I'm against this project. I am. And I heard the muttering in the audience when Dave said he was for it, but I just want to advocate on Dave's behalf. We all live on the coast side. Dave's been on this council for 5 years. The amount of time he has put into this community, he deserves people's respect on this. And because he favors this project does not mean he's selling out the community. He has reasons, and part of that is the methodical box that we are in with regard to the LCP and other things. Dave is not saying, I want to build, build, build. He's saying, based on what we can do, and also at the end of the day, the idea of trying to provide affordable housing for people to live on the coast side, I think is something that everybody in this room who's spoken against this project, I've heard them say at other meetings as a preamble, I support affordable housing. We all do, I think. I don't think there's anybody against this. So I just want to say, I have the utmost respect for Dave and his position. I think it took a lot of courage to say that. And because he said that does not make him an opponent of the coast side or anything else. He has lived here for a long time, and he loves this place, and he is working his butt off for the community.
Thank you, Chris. That does remind me of one other thing I want to say, which was, it's not what's in the bylaws, it's the history of the council and the way I see the council. I'm not saying the other people in the council see it this way, but I see us as representing the community, not the residents, not the landowners, not the business owners, the community. That includes the people who work here. Lisa?
I'll second that. Includes the people who work here. I have great sympathy for the project initially, and it is gradually diminished as all the issues that are enumerated in our letter have come up, and particularly the final blow is the traffic signal at California. When we worked so hard to get a roundabout instead of a signal at Cypress. But anyway, I approached the letter as, hitting all the issues that need to be addressed, which is a compelling list of things that you would have to address, and maybe they are impossible, I don't know, but they need to all be listed, and I did my best to put them in there, and I just wanted to read you, so we added something like this at the, to our letter on, commenting on the Capistrano, RV park proposal, and it says, wide public opposition to this project continues unabated since the 2015 pre-application workshop. Well, we could say something comparable here, since the first meeting that it was here, we have heard this wide public, was that suffice?
That's fine with me.
Okay, I could live with that.
The rest of the council okay with that?
And I might add something to say with, and the specific, many of the specifics are which follow in this letter, you know, the reasons for this public opposition, so.
We'll vote on it as amended shortly, but want to make sure there's nobody strongly opposed to that.
So I think I'm opposed to it. I'm thinking, something like, you know, well articulated and thoroughly thought through opposition. Because you're, respectfully, Lisa, what you just read there just sounds too general. Like you've read it before, or, I mean,
Okay,
you know,
so,
you just hear that kind of stuff.
so we have a few days before we need to mail this off, and we're all getting a little bit tired, and it's late. Is the council okay with Lisa and I coming up with exact wording on that? We can't, because of the Brown Act, circulate it to everybody. We could circulate it to Dan, since he seems to feel most strongly. Would you be okay with that, Lisa?
I don't think that Dan and I could agree on the wording. It won't make him happy. What will make him happy, I could not accept. That's my intuition.
Okay.
Are we gonna be able
Okay.
to see it before it gets sent out?
No.
What we're talking about is a letter alluding to the, or acknowledging what you've asked for. And in the same tone of what some people term passivity, yes, it will be that. And that is what the, this is the civil dialogue I have been taught by my mentors. I'm sorry, in dealing with local government, this is your best shot at getting what you want. You're polite, passive. This is, as Chris noted, probably the least passive thing I've drafted for the council, but nevertheless, you can't insult people or exaggerate. Hyperbole will get you nowhere, and it's like, you need to work with these decision makers on all the projects, and you can't just destroy a relationship on one.
Okay, I'm going to call for a vote to amend the letter to add a sentence substantially like the one we added to the RV park, exact wording to be determined by Lisa.
Just real quickly, Dave and Lisa, why do you think that you won't be able to satisfy?
So Dan, I really don't want to discuss it any further. It's 10 o'clock. I made a motion to amend the letter. Somebody want to second it?
It's not clear to me.
No, it's not
Sorry,
clear
you
to me
got cut
either.
off, Dave. Could you say it again?
I want to make a motion to amend the letter to insert a sentence or paragraph, depending on how you look at it, at the beginning of the letter, substantially like the one we did in our comments on the RV park. Obviously amended slightly to match this project. And Lisa will work on that wording, but it's going to be substantially the same as what we added to the RV park.
Can you recap what that wording was?
Did you read the letter?
Wide public opposition to this project continues unabated since the 2015 pre-application workshop, so the wording will be changed to apply to this. This project came to us in 2015 also.
And that sentence.
Yeah, that doesn't capture, you know, the contamination concerns and some of the
We're
other
not-
concerns.
We're not trying to
We're not
capture
trying
that.
to.
This is trying to capture public sentiment.
No, we're not gonna add a lot of details. We would need another meeting for that. We can write another letter. Somebody else can draft that letter, whatever. We could wait for more information, as we know, cause yeah, the Caltrans comment on this project, that would be good to see. And that may come in September, and we can comment again then.
And this sentence would go at the beginning of the letter?
Yes, first thing.
I think that, Dan, while it may not be as vehement as I would like as well, having it, because that other sentence was I believe at the end of that letter. Having this sentence as the first sentence of this
No,
letter?
this is the beginning of the letter.
Oh, it was? Okay,
Yeah.
having this sentence as the first sentence of the letter, it's the first thing they're gonna read. Oh, community is still
Well,
widely opposed.
And just a reminder, you say the first thing they're gonna read. This is to the project planner. He doesn't care. He's not the decision maker. But we'll put it in there, whatever. We're willing to do
He'll
that.
pass it on to Midpen.
That's
Okay, so,
I second that motion.
okay, all in favor? Okay, carries 7-0, thank you.
Sorry, are you gonna add the concern about the lack of asbestos?
Yes, and so the second
not to
amendment.
this letter. You didn't say that.
That was for
No,
that
I
one.
wanted to make a second amendment on that, I wanted to have them separate, sorry. To add a recommendation that they specifically ask for an analysis of asbestos on the site, because it's a past military site.
That would be a whole new paragraph then,
It
because
would
it doesn't
be-
come under anything else.
It could be,
I think we could do that in our follow-up letter. I think there will be other things. And then we'll have time to maybe something, other environmental things in that same paragraph, you know, and it'll all be of a piece.
When is this due? When is this?
30th. We can
No,
get,
we have
we
a
can get
whole
extended
nother-
time, but
yeah.
that was the
We
original.
could have a special meeting.
The 30th of August or September?
30th of August.
Could have a special meeting
And
before
like I say,
then.
he said we could wait another.
I would rather not have a special meeting on this, if we can close on it tonight. Lisa's right, it doesn't fit anywhere in the existing letter, it would have to be a whole new section. I withdraw my motion to amend. Does anybody else want to propose and strongly defend a further amendment? Hearing none, I'm going to call for a vote on this, on the letter.
We just did
Thought
vote.
we did that.
No, we voted on the amendment.
We voted on the first sentence in the letter, and now we're gonna vote on the letter.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, I thought I was voting on the whole letter. Sorry. Did y'all think that, we were voting on
Yeah.
the whole letter?
With
I
that
would have said
With that
as
amendment,
amended,
yes.
but I was trying to get the wording in the amendment. I'm sorry, I thought I made that clear in my motion. But I think we'll probably get the same vote, so. Do I hear a motion to approve the letter as amended?
I move that we approve the letter as amended.
A second? Second, moved and seconded, all in favor? 7-0. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, everybody in the audience, and everybody with expertise. Please get in touch with the planner or with the council and offer up your expertise.
It's helpful to
Wait a minute,
have.
we're not done yet. Council does not get to leave yet.
We can move fast though, right?
We're gonna let the audience drain out those who want to. It's too hard to hold the meeting otherwise.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you
Yes,
for coming
thank
and
you.
for your support.
Thank you for your comments.
Is that on the council?
All right, we are on to council activity. Does anybody on the council have council activity to report on? Lisa?
I was just gonna say, went to the, opening for the library on, I think it was Wednesday or Thursday night. It's really nice. Been there a couple times, it's already missing a letter in the name of the library. The library
It fell
outside,
down?
the L was missing. But, all in all, that's it.
Dan, please don't do that during the meeting.
How is it disturbing the meeting?
It's disturbing me. Please sit down, we'll finish the meeting.
If you don't wanna hear our council activity, we'll just stop. and
I
go
can
home.
listen, I can multitask, I am listening.
Sit or leave.
You know what, Dave? I'll leave. If you wanna talk to me that way, I will leave. So I'm not gonna accept it, Dave. You already kinda ticked me off early in the beginning of the meeting.
Okay.
I'm working together, there's a lot of work, it's,
Activities? Any other future agenda items?
I make a motion to adjourn.
Chris has an agenda.
I don't, it's not fully fleshed out, Dave. And so I don't know if I can even mention it as just something I'm thinking about. I'm not asking the council to make any comment on it. I just wanted to say I'm thinking about, I had an idea that maybe the council, per the, agenda item we had last meeting, that possibly the council could have an agenda item where we talk about, working with the county and state parks to put a little plaque on the Surfers Beach stairs for Malcolm Fay. There's a wooden plywood sign up that's not gonna be there in a year or two. The amount of people that showed up was incredible. I never met him, but I cried many tears.
Very tragic.
It's an interesting idea. Pursue it. Any other future agenda items? All right. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion to adjourn.
We are adjourned